Hey everyone, welcome to my channel Transcendence. My name is Christian Ramirez, and I'm here with my friends Kevin Thiemann and Josie Golden. And today we're gonna go over some spiritual talk.
Can you introduce your cat first, though? Because
That's Stormy.
so cute back there.
Stormy, yeah, I won't grab her because she doesn't like being picked up, unless I like grab her by the scruff. But
Yeah, that's how I was raised with cats, and you always pick them up by the neck. Yeah.
and Noir
This is
just finally.
Huckle.
Oh, what's her name?
This is Huckleberry.
Huckleberry. Hi,
Yeah,
Huckleberry.
he's got the extra thumbs.
Huckleberry. Oh, really? So cute.
Yeah, he's
love
polydactyl.
cats.
So I have 3 cats. Stormy actually was mine, but Chris took her. Yeah, no, it's fine because she
Really?
likes him better anyway.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, she
Yeah.
totally chose him.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yeah,
Wow.
I found her in a storm. I was at work and she was in the middle of an intersection just being pounded by the water, and it was flooding right in front of her. I drove through the flooding and I just picked her up, and I had her. She's only like 6 months old, and I got her when she was like I'm thinking about 8 weeks. So there was her mom is feral, and her siblings, I've seen them around, and they were living in the ditch. That's probably why they all scattered when the flash flooding happened. But yeah, so, and then I had taken her over to Chris's place to have play dates with Noir, and they love each other, and she loves Chris like so much more than she loves me. So she just kind of picked him.
Everybody loves Chris.
Right.
That's a good show name.
Oh, that's cute. I was raised with cats. My mom raised Persian kittens.
Oh, wow.
I grew up with little kittens my whole life, and I had 3 cats growing up, and I had them their whole life, since they were a kitten all the way till old age. So
Yeah.
and then I told Christian, and it was in my last podcast, I was visited in a dream by my cat.
Oh
Did you
my
see
gosh.
that part, Jesse?
Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, if you want to introduce yourself, Josie, and talk about like how this all got started for you, your spiritual awakening, and how you started coming into all this stuff.
Right. So I was raised Christian. Actually, like I don't even remember it, but my father is Mormon. So, but I wasn't raised Mormon. I was raised, I don't know, I guess non-denominational, but we did go to a few different churches. And I don't know, things never really sat right with me. God, or the Christian God, sounded very hypocritical. And I don't know, nothing really matched up, and just the internet, really, people posting things and talking about spirituality, and I didn't get into NDEs until I met you, so I didn't really know about that, but I was coming across slowly with people talking about energy.
Right.
And how everything is energy. And I've always been a big fan of science. And, I know you have your opinions about material science. But I've always been a fan. And I know that we are all energy. Everything is energy. And it can't be created or destroyed. And I came to my own conclusion, then that means that there can't be nothing when we die. Because I'm energy. And if souls exist, souls are energy. And I just believe that it's just another dimension. So we just transcend. So, and then getting on TikTok, my feed started getting more into spiritual people, and I started following them. So learning a little bit more. And then I met you, and I'd always been afraid of aliens because of the media, like War of the Worlds. I have nightmares about that. So, they're coming to get you and there's nowhere to hide. And so I thought, aliens are bad and scary. And then what I've learned is that they're not. So I'm still learning, and I feel like I have a healthy amount of skepticism, because I don't want to believe everything I'm told. But when things just start matching up and everybody's kind of saying the same thing, it's kind of hard not to, be open to that. So, but definitely still learning, still growing.
Yeah. And I actually recently watched one of the NDEs you mentioned. I have to get the guy's name, but one of the NDEs you pointed out, Kevin, it was funny because I was already watching it when you pointed it out. You're like, oh, what about this?
Oh, that first one?
This person? Yeah, and he starts talking about his experience and how everything is happening all at once, and he could see the future, although his specific one, when he came back, he didn't remember the future or what source or God was telling him when he came back, but he was remember being shown all of this, and that every soul or being was there, and there were different varying degrees of light. And I don't think he actually released any of his contact info or anything like that in that one. I watched that one till the end. I didn't see anything, but I'm going to see if I can find his name so we can start pulling some people who've had it.
You sent me 2, and I haven't watched them yet.
Yeah, one of them is the guy I'm referencing, because
Okay.
he talked about how he got very sick. Different background. He's from Russia lineage, his family, and he was sick, and his mom was taking him to places so they could pray over him, and he ended up having an experience where he was in a lot of like pain, and then he actually felt himself crawling out of his body, like actually coming out. And then as soon as he left his body, he disassociated with his physical body. Like he didn't remember like who that body was. When he looked at the body, he disassociated it with who he was in the what we call our present. And that does happen a lot. Sometimes people will disassociate, like, who's that body there? Because you're obviously somewhere else. You're here. He says it was natural to him.
Eben Alexander, remember, he didn't even know that he was Eben Alexander while he was doing it, right?
Mm-hmm. He was just
he
awareness.
Had a total association.
Consciousness,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, he had a different awareness, and he didn't remember who he was. You said you wanted to talk about what kind of society we would have if everyone just had an NDE and everyone realized what was really important, who we really are, and all of that. You wanted to go into that?
Yeah, definitely. First, I wanted to just quickly tell Josie about my cat visitation.
Oh,
right.
Yeah, this was a cat that I had for 15 years. She's a tabby, like a brown tabby. She has an M on her forehead. And I had her for 15 years. I got her from a rescue shelter in the beginning, and loved her. And then she was with me while I started my business and everything. Anyway, over the past few days, I've been starting these podcasts with Christian, and then at some point I asked for like a sign. I was trying to ask for a visitation or something, and I was I asked for a sign, and then it was a couple days later that I had this dream, and then I was in between two dreams that were unrelated. I got into this kind of sleep paralysis state for a bit, and my eyes were closed, but I felt like I was awake. But I could see Lilo, my cat, on my bed very clearly. She came up and just was there, and she didn't have an agenda. She was just loving me, and almost like the feeling you get when they're about to purr.
Yeah.
They're so happy. She was there.
Make me cry.
She was there, and I just felt this. I felt this love from her, and I just I was, after a while, I got shocked. After a few seconds, I was trying to think, like, is this really happening? And I looked over to the left, and then I looked back to see if she'd still be there, and she was still there. And it was so strong, and she just stayed there. And I knew it was her, and I couldn't open my eyes. I was trying to open my eyes to see if this was really real,
Yeah.
But but anyway, I think the whole thing lasted for maybe 10 seconds, but it couldn't really tell, 10 to 20 seconds. And then it just sort of faded away, and then I went into this other black place for a while, which is typical in dreaming, and then I went to another dream. But that was so different from my other dreams. And
That's
so
that's
I was
interesting. You dream that way.
What'd you say?
I don't have in betweens. Mine just kind of
Yeah.
meld together. So
Yeah.
they just
Yeah,
they
this was
just
so
like
different from the other. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I can relate a little, not with the I mean with sleep paralysis, but not specifically like that. My first cat was Oreo, and I had him for 19 years. I got him when he was about 3 months old. And I've like never loved anything more in my entire life than that cat. And I do have dreams of him often. And but it's not sleep paralysis. It's definitely a dream. And sometimes I kind of realize I'm dreaming, but I don't. So I'm like, oh, this is my cat, Oreo. He just comes back from the dead sometimes. Because like in my head, I know he's dead, but here he is. And I'm like, he's been gone for a while, but here he is. He just every once in a while comes back from the dead. And, and it's just, yeah, I mean, it's hard though. You miss them, but it's good when they visit.
Yeah.
Yeah. That thing that I had with Lilo, it was very much like people describe in their NDEs, where it felt real. And
Yeah.
the way I was seeing her was like not exactly vision. I mean, my eyes were shut, so it definitely
Right.
wasn't vision exactly. But it felt so obvious that it was definitely her, and yet without even having my eyes open. That's
Well, the
yeah.
thing
These
is,
things are
people
humbling and mind-boggling.
people
Yeah.
who have out-of-body experiences or near-death experiences still have sight, even though their physical body is dead for the time being. They can still sense
360.
360-degree field of vision. They talk about heightened senses. They can still smell, even hearing thoughts of what other people are thinking and feeling, and actually feeling them as they focus their awareness to whatever person that they're interacting with. It's greater senses than what we have, and it's interesting because they say that being here is more like being dead. It's more like the dead-like state, where over there you're alive. You're so alive. You're more alive than you've ever been, compared to this state, which is very limiting. And we have two eyes, we have nose, ears, we have these limited senses. We can only see in a specific spectrum of color. It's just and you look at the chart, and it's just like this minuscule amount of what we can actually see in the visible light spectrum. So there's just a lot more out there, I think, and even when people use the terms like, my grandmother's dead, but they're not actually dead. It's just a different form. But as we understand it as humans so far, it's just saying, oh, they're dead and that's gone, but not really. To the contrary is what NDEs keep revealing.
That's what's so weird about sleep paralysis though, because when you dream, like say I'm dreaming of my room right now,
Right?
it's always different. Like it could be completely different, but in my head I know it's my dream. But if I'm having sleep paralysis here in my bed and I can see, I mean I can't because my eyes are closed, I'm paralyzed and I'm dreaming and I'm awake, everything looks the same. Like it's happening right then. Like
Yeah.
it's but it's not like that in dreams,
I've always felt
So
like my eyes are open.
Exactly.
yeah.
When I
Yeah,
have
I
sleep
can see-
paralysis, I feel like my eyes are open. I'm aware where I'm at. I'm in my room. I'm in my bed. I'm not dreaming. I'm thinking. And usually when I see entities or beings, if they're freaking me out, then then it's a little scary. But
Yeah, that's exactly how it was with my cat. It's like more real in a different way, and even though my eyes are shut, it definitely felt like one step towards the NDE world. I think it was similar in realness to this realm for me. It didn't seem more real than this realm, but I was sure it was my cat, and it was a different thing than a dream. It was a different place, and I was actually locked in there. I was actually forced in there because like I said, I was trying to look away in order to like snap out of it. This is like I was trying to figure out whether it was real, and it kept forcing me into it. And she just kept sending me love, and it was kind of, and I didn't realize till after that was the signal that I asked for. I thought I was going to be visited by my dad or my mom or a relative, but it ended up being my cat. And afterwards, I realized that I loved my cat more than anything, and she was there for me in my hard times.
Yeah.
Getting a visit from her was perfect.
What I learned in mediumship and going to classes to kind of like learn how to facilitate these abilities, because they were just happening to me at random. My teacher was talking about this, and I've heard other channelers, mediums talk about this, that you can't control who comes through. So if anyone says they can control, or they have a telephone to dial, grandma who's on the other side, just be wary. And that's why they say specifically, like when you go into a session with someone, be careful who you bring, because sometimes you're going there because you want to connect with your lost, pet or person that you lost, but you have someone else come with you, and all of their family is coming with them to come through, and you're like, wait a minute, I thought this is for me. Like, why are we talking about this person over here? Because you can't control who comes through, and a lot of times I think it's we mentioned this before. It's who you need to come through, and you had mentioned, Kevin, that that was perfect for you, that Lilo came through for you.
Yeah. Hey, Josie, do you study near-death experiences? Like, do you watch them?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't. I feel like studying is
Wrong word.
Yeah. No, it's just. I mean, it's everything's sort of in passing for me. I get very distracted, so it's I don't really dive into it like Chris does. He's wherever he can get the information from, he's going to get it. I mean, whether it's books, it's YouTube, it's researching online, I just like, as it comes to me, so if I see something, I scroll on TikTok and it's there, then I'll listen. If he sends me something, I'll watch it. I wouldn't.
To a lot. You send them to me a lot now. You're like, oh, look, I'm seeing this, and you told me, you're like, now I'm seeing it everywhere.
Yes.
Like, yeah, because you're paying attention.
I mean, we'll just talk about something, and then I'll like somebody I'm not even following, or a spiritual person I'm not even following on TikTok, or maybe they're not even like their TikTok is about spirituality. They just had something to share, and it just comes up, and I'm like, whoa, we were just talking about that, and then I send it to Chris to be like, look,
Yeah.
It's been and you may have already seen this because you watched a little bit of my other podcasts, but it has been the biggest life transformation I've ever gone through. It was right in the last year. It really happened. It started about a year ago for me when I heard the story from my friend who was my assistant before of her near-death experience. Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to say that, it was such a big transformation for me, biggest one I've ever had. But I connected all the dots when my assistant told me about her near-death experience. It suddenly, I realized all those times where I had a partial near-death experience when I was younger, and I passed out because the blood went out of my head, and my head hit the ground, and I was bleeding out of my head, and it was horrible. And I woke up way later, and I realized that I had gone to a dark place and made a decision to keep living. When I looked in the mirror, and I knew at that time that you decide when you live or die. And I had thought that many times before, like I woke up on the highway and was heading towards the median, and I steered out of the way at the last second.
Oh boy.
I've had like 5 or 6 close calls with death. Another time my friend was driving straight towards me with his car. He was playing chicken. We were teenagers.
No.
He had a turbo car, and he was driving it straight towards me, and I was like, come on, hit me. And there was the sun behind me, and I didn't realize the sun was behind me. He didn't even see me, and he was speeding up. He's probably going about 50, speeding up, and then right at the last second, I was about 17. At the last second, I jumped, and like the edges of my feet barely hit his car as I jumped out of the.
Oh my God, it's so dangerous.
Yeah, it's crazy. No, I was standing in the street. He was just driving, playing chicken. I thought he saw me. I thought we were playing chicken.
I thought you were driving at each other.
He was behind me. He couldn't see me at all. And I didn't realize it till the last second and jumped out of the way. But I had enough of those close calls, and including the one where I was on the highway, and I woke up at the last second and steered out of the way of sudden death because I was heading straight towards the steel median at 90 miles an hour. It was like, and I woke up and I just gently steered out of the way. It was really calm.
There was a lot of what-if moments there.
I've had none. No
there's
close calls.
A lot of what-if moments.
Yeah, and so anyway, I just connected all those things together and realized that, you know, my assistant was telling the truth about the place that she went, and then I started looking into NDEs, and ever since then, my life has gotten so much better. I mean, I think why I keep bringing this up is because I managed to live 38 years of my life without realizing this stuff.
Yeah.
And I often say that life is mostly illusions.
Your life sounds like Final Destination. I have that many close calls. Oh my God.
That movie's so scary whenever you think about like things falling down in your house and hitting you or something.
Oh yeah, it's great for people with anxiety, let me tell you.
Anyway, I talked to my friend Bruce last night. He's an older man, about 50 or 55. And I was telling him life is mostly illusions. And I said another quote that I hear a lot is, life is about decreasing your ignorance, just getting less ignorant over time. That's a good one.
Greater awareness.
But I say life is mostly illusions. So for me, I lived in the illusion for 38 years that we were all separate, that there was no connectedness going on at all. And I had this separate mindset. That's what was taught to me in school. And it had so many bad side effects. I would think about death, and I thought it would just be black. And I was kind of mentally preparing myself for just nothingness. And as I told Christian last time, whenever I try to think about nothingness, Josie, I think you were saying this too, where you try to think about nothingness, and you get into this, for me, I get into this downward spiral. My stomach falls, and it falls so rapidly. It's really scary. And I remember like the first time I tried to imagine nothingness, I was a little kid. I was just driving along, and I looked at the trees, and I thought, when I die, there's nothingness and blackness, and then my stomach just fell, and I got so scared.
Yeah.
And I've had that happen a few times. Every time I think about nothingness, I just get so scared, and my stomach falls. It makes a lot more sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't feel right either, but that's what science was teaching me. That's what my parents lead me to believe. I just can't believe I went 38 years. And then now I finally realized that it doesn't just end when
you said you weren't raised religious, right?
Yeah, that's right. My family wasn't religious, spiritual.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so significant about NDEs is that everyone who has them, we're not talking about the hellish NDEs, but everyone who has a positive NDE, which seems to be more of that, is less afraid to die after that. They lose their fear of death. Now, that's not to say they're not afraid of pain. They don't want to die painfully or something, but they say they're not afraid of what comes next afterwards. So like, I've been there, I know it's real, and I'm no longer afraid. So that's saying something too.
I haven't even been through a full NDE, but I'm not afraid of death at all.
It's a really cool thing to hear.
I feel like the pain is like part of the substance of life. And I embrace it.
Until I met Chris, terrified of death. Terrified. Now, I mean, it's not something I want to do. I still don't, I like living. I like being here. But I feel more that it won't be the end of me, which comforts me, because me not existing just, I don't like the thought of that. I mean, even when things in this life are painful or scary or whatever, I'm still glad that I'm here. And to not experience anything, to just not be me, to not be conscious in any way, that doesn't sit right with me. I don't like that thought at all. So knowing that all these people are saying that you yourself, your essence, you don't die when your physical body dies, is very reassuring to me.
Yes.
And they
Still
also
not ready to go. Still not
Yeah.
ready to go, but yeah.
I'm also fascinated yeah, it is. And I'm so fascinated that people don't usually the common theme or consensus is that I don't want to come back here. Once they experience that reality that's more real than this reality, they don't want to come back. Some of them do, some of them decide, maybe because my kids or whatever, but then there are people who say, even though I had kids, even though I had a husband or a wife or whatever, I didn't want to come back because it was that amazing. And there are no words. A lot of people say that there are no words to compare it. You can't compare it. It was so
And they
real.
often get depressed when they come back.
Yeah, a lot of people.
To me, was a surprising thing to figure out.
People get depressed.
Literally, a large amount of them, I don't know how many, maybe half of them or something, they come back and then the sunsets don't look as good anymore. They get depressed for a couple months, they say.
It's like going back to...
I don't know if I want to experience that, because, I mean, gosh, rainbows, sunsets, trees, leaves, everything, flowers. I'm so in awe by them all the time. I wouldn't want that to take that away from me, you know?
Well, I was surprised to hear that. I thought that's why I wanted to talk to you, Christian, about what the sun actually is, and whether there's a connection to the actual light source that everybody sees. They call it light in their NDEs. Whenever they encounter source, it's light. And I'm just wondering, science has figured out that the sun is the origin of all life. What's the connection between the sun and the actual source and light energy? And why is it that when people come back they're depressed at sunsets and stuff? I think the answer is it's just a filtered down version of the same reality. It's just muddy and unclear. Yeah. It doesn't mean that the sunsets aren't beautiful. It's just that they're not nearly as good as what you just saw, and they're filtered down compared to what you just saw. But there's still, I don't know, there's still a spiritual experience for me. And I haven't gone through a full NDE. Yeah, right? So
and
it's not like they mean nothing.
Eben, yeah, of course not. And Eben calls it, or he likens it to Plato's world of forms, where this reality is not the base reality, but it's based off of the source or main reality. So anything you can think of, whether it's flowers, waterfalls, trees, or sunsets, there's a version of that that's better on a higher frequency somewhere that is more real, more apparently real, which is, how do you describe that? What's more real than this? Is like the big question. But that's the only words that people usually have to describe it, because we still have to utilize the human language. But
it's got to be whatever created this world,
right?
The source that created this physical world is when you can see underneath what created this world. Then you'd rather have what's underneath.
It's really cool to see that we're all a part of that. And I think it's almost kind of like getting in like a very fancy sports car when you've been driving like a, really old like Honda Civic for a long time, and then all of a sudden you get into...
Hey, don't make fun of my first car.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I love myself a beat up old car. Those are the best ones.
Yeah, and then you get into like a super nice Tesla all of a sudden, and you're like, huh, this is really nice. You're like, then you have to get back into the old car, and you're like, huh, It's not the same. It's not the same. I think it's kind of like that, where, I mean, our bodies are vehicles in a way. So it's just kind of like you enter this other vehicle and you're like, oh, this is so much better. Imagine color television for the first time, how that was like
Oh,
for people seeing
Is
in
it
black
like
and white.
entering another vehicle, or is it like losing your vehicle and just being your pure raw
Well,
self?
well, that, but I'm just using that as like a little example, like tomato, tomato. I just mean like experiencing something different than what you've actually been experiencing, but not
Yeah.
the actual
Well, no,
mechanics of what that is.
I think my question leads to a deeper philosophical question, which is there a reality that's even more real than the NDE reality?
It seems,
Look at how it looks now.
yeah,
There's a dream level, there's this level, and then there's the NDE level. How do you know there's only three?
I don't think that there's only three, and I think it goes on, because I don't think you can place a limitation on all that is creation, because creation, as I understand it, wants to experience itself in every facet, in every way. And if it only wanted to experience itself in one way, you would be having this conversation with yourself and only you here alone on this podcast. Or I would be the only person in existence, or you, Josie, would be the only person in existence. But because there's just so many people and so many different perspectives and so many outlets, it wants to experience itself as all that is, as an expression of all that is.
that
And
would be
we are,
so boring.
yeah, we're
Just
all a part of,
you, the only consciousness.
yeah.
So boring.
And from different channeled sessions, the beings that come through say that there are levels that they're not even aware of, or they don't know what happens above certain levels because it's so beyond their relative reality that they don't know yet because they're not there yet. But they say it will be apparent, like the reality they're in currently is apparent. It'll become apparent to you when you're there, and you'll have that understanding.
So I just kind of slightly want to hone in on something more concrete than that, which is there's two different paths that could be what's happening. One is when we go to the NDE place, that could be the very, very base level. It could be that that's what you feel like in your purest energy form, and that you might go into an alien life after that, or a human life, or a cricket, or whatever. You probably won't go into a cricket after a human life. But hold on, wait. What I'm trying to say is, or it's like the video game aspect. Like when we create a video game in this reality, when that video game gets shut off, you go up to the next level of reality, which is where you are before you made that simulation or that video game. And if this human life is shut off, your body dies. You go up to that level. Is that level just yet another boot? Another boot level that's being simulated at a higher level. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's a different thing than saying there's, and that's a different thing than whether we come back to the real source or not. Is it the real source? And has anybody in their NDEs said that's for sure the real reality, or did they say
The way I understand it is we're all source. We're all a piece of source. So I mean, your source, I'm source, everything's source.
Yeah, that's been described in NDEs that what God is all that is, and it wouldn't be all that is without you, because it's all that is. And if you were to place a limitation on all that is, you're then limiting the entire framework of what it's doing, whether you realize it or not. And I don't think you can place a limitation on creation, because there is like, who knows, like you've seen like the new, what do they call the Hubble telescope? Like there is so much out there that we can't even conceive of, and we only have this like, small awareness of it, but we like to try and like say, well, maybe it's this, but I think it just goes on and on and on. And if there's like infinite, there's
but the way
I mean, just on this physical plane, how much we haven't discovered on this physical plane. And you think about
under the ocean.
Yeah, they only discovered like 5% of the ocean, or what is it, like 1% or 5%? It's one of those numbers.
Exactly.
I think that's I think that statistic is a misconception, but since I don't know the proper one, sorry. I know I've heard that before. It's
I think it's a
more than
base.
5%.
And,
Yeah, I've often said that no matter what level you're exploring, internally or the physical world, there's infinite depth. Not only is there infinite depth, there's infinite depth in every single spot, just like a fractal pattern. Even if you just zoom into one little spot on this little microphone right here, you can get lost in the beauty of just the structure of the one little spot on the microphone. And you
That
can
sounds
have
like when I zone out.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. There's infinite depth at every level and at every spot, and there's infinite places to explore as well.
Absolutely.
Science is slowly starting to discover, we touched on this already a little bit, but they're discovering that this reality is based on like fractal patterns, sacred geometry, and these patterns are going on and on and on, and that's when you start going into a holographic universe with the understanding that everything is made up of light, everything is holographic in nature, and we can still experience it, even though it's light, we can still experience it in a physical way where we could touch things and experience them in that kind of way. But
I should tell the story
really
of when I got the fractal pattern.
What happened?
Yeah, so Josie, too, I want to tell you is that, I practiced karate, and I was a national competitor in karate, and I just trained really hard, and I put my body through a lot of physical, intense labor.
Right.
And one night I was training, practicing karate at my house, and for about an hour and a half, and I was so tired and so exhausted. And at the end of the kata, which is like a training exercise, like a pianist, would play a piano warm up or something. At the end of the kata, I had a visualization come to me. It just came to my mind, and it was a fractal pattern, and it looked like the Mandel fractal pattern.
Like a mandala?
Yeah, I always get the name wrong. I think it's
That's
Mandela or
Mandala.
Mandela? Okay.
Mandala.
Like you're saying man, and then Dala. Like you're saying it with a New York accent.
I
Mandala.
feel like Mandela is the name of that. But
The
Mandela.
Mandela effect. It's different. They are pronounced different, but now, yeah.
Yeah. Nelson Mandela and Mandela.
But it was that kind of thing where I saw this circles, and I saw a fractal pattern where you could zoom into any part, and every part was the same as the whole.
It sounds like what Chris says all the time. It sounds like you had a download.
I definitely feel like I did. In fact, I was only 23 years old, and just coming into my spirituality, nowhere near where I am now, never knew about NDEs. And I had this as a visualization, but the meaning came after that. Not only did I see this fractal pattern, the meaning rushed in. I felt that when you exhibit courage at any point in your life, that spreads throughout the world in an instant. I had like the example of if you have to protect your girlfriend if she's in danger, and you produce the courage to protect her, not only does your whole life and your whole world change because of the courage you made, but the entire world feels it at the same time. And that is what it was teaching me.
Yeah.
And then I looked it up, and I started looking up fractal patterns, and and then I held on to that fractal pattern theory for a long time, and every time I bring it up, it aligns with everything I'm discovering now.
Well, that sounds like when you say courage, it sounds like that's under the umbrella of love. Like Chris has said, it's either love or fear. And obviously love is in a higher dimension, and fear is a higher vibration, and fear is in a lower vibration. And love is just incredibly powerful. So, I mean, I could totally see how doing any sort of act of love would change everything around you.
Yeah, that's a great point. I never thought of courage as love before. I never thought of that, but it is. It is that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as a kid growing up, I always thought courage was the way to make your life better. If you want to have a better life, there's that quote that said, the size of a person's world is measured by the amount of courage they exhibit.
Yeah.
I've got to get
courage
better
is a
about
huge,
that.
everybody does, especially in modern society. It's easy to not have courage in modern society
Yeah.
because you don't have to confront, actual predators, or you don't have a lot of
Oh, see,
acute
that's stuff
situations.
that that's something that I'm not even scared of. Like, I'll just, like, Chris has seen me. I go out and I help rattlesnakes across the road. Like, it's, there's other things that I'm afraid of. It's, I think I
Yeah.
would have been fine in primitive times. I think I would have been okay.
Yeah, I think my more major point was that you can be really successful in this society without having much courage at all.
Yeah, I
You can be like
suppose.
a
Yeah.
super successful CEO and all that without even being courageous. But anyway, courage was a huge part of karate and the martial arts mentality, and I always attached to that courage and wanted to produce more of it and everything. And I did grow a lot by producing the courage to work hard and develop myself. And it takes courage to do a better karate kick because you could hurt yourself doing it.
Yeah, if you don't do it correctly, right?
Yeah, and you have
Yeah.
to produce a big amount of energy and all that. Anyway, I never thought about courage being in the vibration of love, but I think it absolutely is, and that is probably what it was teaching me, that when you exhibit love, it spreads to the whole world at the same time. And I didn't understand how that could work, but the fractal pattern thing was teaching me that if you change one part of the fractal pattern, it can change the entire pattern.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's loosely makes sense to me, and then but it's come up many times since then, and now it's coming up in the NDEs. I didn't even expect it to come up in NDEs.
The fractal patterns?
Yeah.
Is that, what is that?
The thing that Christian sent me was about holograms and fractal patterns.
Oh, yeah,
And that's what
Rick
you sent me
Reed.
too that I haven't watched yet?
No, not yet. I'll send you that one. I have it, so I'll send you that
Okay.
one. That's with
Definitely watch that.
Greg
It's the same
Braden.
one that.
he's a
Yeah,
scientist.
Yeah, I feel
It's truly-
uninformed in this moment about how those two things connect, but I'll get there.
He's come to the same
Well, I'm
conclusion
still
that
trying
we
to figure it
don't
out too.
die.
But here's one example. when people go have near-death experiences, one guy, for example, described, Christian and I both watched this one, that he could see into everybody's soul at the same time
Mm-hmm.
and talk to everybody at the same time. And then there's no time as well in the NDE world. So this is already mind-blowing to try to think about.
Right,
But,
that's what I
yeah.
struggle with.
It's so hard. Just that one thing alone, it's so hard. Yeah. So no time, a timeless state, but you're seeing into everybody's soul at the same time, and you can all communicate at the same time, and that is like what a fractal pattern has to be. And the hologram thing is what Christian showed me, which is that in a hologram, if you look into any part of it, you can see the entire picture. And so there's something about that structure that allows an individual like myself to feel like I'm the center of the universe, to feel like I'm God, which I believe I have God source in me, and to also feel like I'm just a tiny little part. If I actually analyze it, see all the people that are around, I'm just one tiny little piece of everything. But I feel like I'm everything. That is the same thing as the hologram.
Yep.
Okay.
It's the same thing. You are actually everything. And if you look deep enough into me and my cells and everything, you will see the exact image that you would see if you zoomed way out and saw the entire structure of everything.
That falls in line with what near-death experiences are
That
saying.
just hurt my brain a little bit.
Yeah, that falls in
That-
line with
Good.
That was like a oh, whoa.
that falls in line with what NDEers are saying when they come back and they say that we're really all one, and they have that understanding after going into that reality that we're all a part of each other, because that filter gets removed whenever they, cross over briefly, and then they get to see that, like when they think someone they hated or whatever, and they get to see what that person's life went through, and they could see that that person lacked love, and you start to see the interconnectedness that we don't see because we have the illusion of separation down here. And over there, it becomes apparent that we're all connected. We're all part of this one whole. And from that perspective, it seems ridiculous to try to hurt someone else who's a part of the same whole, because we're connected. When you hurt somebody else, you're hurting yourself. And
we're in the illusion.
yeah,
That's the only reason we never hurt another person.
That's why I struggle with it so much, because I have issues with forgiveness. So,
yeah. But
As
yeah,
we all,
and that's another thing they talk about, that Earth is a school to learn those types of lessons, because over there you can't learn the lesson of wholeness and more compassion when you're immersed in compassion and love the entire time. You wouldn't know the difference. So as a soul, as your individual, like as your growth, you go to down to earth school to separate yourself from all that is, from that interconnected knowingness, and you forget that you're a part of all of that, and through
that's
the
worth an
illusion,
entire discussion by itself.
yeah, and
Why you
through
forget.
kind of
that,
like, you know, how can you experience all facets of life if you haven't experienced dark?
yeah, it's contrast, and
Yeah.
through actually going into it, through the contrast, you actually learn. You actually take it more seriously when you don't know what's going to happen on the other side. You know what I mean? Because you're like, oh, I don't know what happens when I die.
Plus, like when you watch a movie at night, like I like to get into the movie and forget that I'm even myself. I like to sink into the characters and live their life. Like I want to feel their life. So I intentionally want to forget who I actually am for a moment while I'm sinking into that. And same with like if you were playing a video game or something, you sink into the thing that you are and you become that thing for a moment. It's exactly what we're doing. From all the stories on the NDEs, that's exactly what we're doing here. We come into the human body and we forget where we are so we can fully immerse and take it utterly seriously. And there's a reason we all have thought for so long that we're separate things.
I love that analogy.
Right?
Yeah.
You got to sink into it. Yeah, it's fun to forget.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know?
They do say that it's also fun to come here sometimes. And sometimes the soul wants to experience that physicality, and that is interesting. That's awesome.
And Rupert Spira says that it takes work to keep this illusion up. That's one of the things he says. That's why you want to sleep at night, so you can rest from this illusion. And when you're resting at night in a dream, you're going back to that astral place or whatever you call it, where you're not just Kevin anymore in the dream world.
I don't know. My astral place must suck because I have a lot of nightmares.
Well, nightmares part of it. But yeah, I mean, everybody has nightmares. But yeah, it's yeah.
And
did you have something specific? One that was really intense?
Oh no. I mean, I have mostly nightmares. Yeah. It's a thing.
There was a time in my life where I had a lot of nightmares too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fine. Every once in a while I have a good dream, so it makes me appreciate them more.
We talked about it, some of it, and yeah, I mean, I'm sure you're going to have more good dreams, you know. It could be something that you're not realizing. I don't think anything is by accident. Or maybe something that your perspective will broaden on over time. And
could just be working through past traumas. So.
Or that too. 'Cause I think dreams and stuff are a mix of that realm, that other realm, and then other things, other lessons we may be learning, you know, in this reality. When we come down.
Josie.
Sorry?
I was going to say, I go, every time I fall asleep at night, I completely surrender to the fact that I could have a nightmare or that I could have a happy dream. And my goal now is to just say, like, to sink into whatever it is that comes, really. I have no choice. But I don't try to avoid nightmares, and I actually don't really care when I fall asleep, whether I have a nightmare, whether I have a happy dream. I feel like I'll just
That's where
go on the adventure. Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah, I
yeah.
know. I would definitely like to have less nightmares. And if I'm learning anything from them, I'm not sure what I'm learning, but maybe I'll know that someday.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, there are some times where I don't have any dreams too for like a month. I'll have no dreams that I can remember.
Wow, I don't know what that's like.
Huh.
I dream every night, vividly, every night.
Wow.
Well,
I don't know what that's like. I
here's-
often don't remember.
It's exhausting.
Here's the thing.
exhausting.
I didn't know this. I didn't know this for a very long time, but there are apparently people. I used to think everyone could do this. There are people who cannot imagine pictures in their mind, or when they think they can't see pictures.
Oh, they don't
in their
have an
mind.
inner monologue. I thought everybody did.
And
That's
some-
got to be
some
a
people.
spiritual thing.
So, like, if I can tell you to imagine a rose in your mind, like imagine a pretty rose in your mind, could you do it? There are
course.
people. There are people who can't do that, and I dated someone
No.
like that, and I was like, "Really?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I started looking this up, and there are people who cannot. They swear they're like, I don't see a picture in my mind. I know what a rose is, but I don't see a picture in my mind." Which
Yeah,
is
they don't.
weird.
They don't see
possible.
pictures.
Yeah, they don't see pictures
Well,
in
they
their
have-
minds. Well,
Pictures are like aren't they fundamental? Even to vision, you can't see without being able to.
well, that's
Translate it to your mind and-
that's your level of awareness.
I don't. It's like it's almost like, how do you learn anything? How do you remember anything? Because isn't it all in here all the time? And I guess not. But I mean, it must also be so peaceful to not have an inner monologue that's going all the time. That's what I would imagine. I'd love to experience that, actually. And I know that that's something that Chris is trying to teach me with meditation, which I am not grasping.
It takes
Yes.
time. for some.
Yeah, like he keeps telling me, you got to practice. You got to
Do
practice.
it either.
You
I
can't,
can't
do it either.
Yeah, meditate. I can't. Every time I try to meditate, it doesn't do anything for me. I tried binaural beats and
I
everything.
can't shut this off. Like, I don't know how yet. Chris says there's a way you can do it. You just have to keep practicing. But as it is now, I don't know how to get this to stop. It's always going. A little
Yeah.
hamster in a wheel, always going.
Well, you have to
Yeah.
stop it for sleeping at night.
No, that's
Right.
why I dream constantly. I don't get any
Oh.
deep sleep. I only get light sleep and REM sleep. So that's why I'm tired all the
Interesting.
time. It's great.
Yeah.
You only get light. So yeah, you feel like you're missing that deep sleep.
Correct. It's I dream all night long. I even start dreaming before I fall asleep sometimes. My mind doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, she's told me that a lot.
Hmm.
But
Well, I can relate to mine not stopping. I don't think my mind ever stops either, even if I don't remember.
if you think
Right.
about it, you've that's all you've ever done in this lifetime, and it's just like when you ask someone to do something opposite of what they've always done, it's challenging. It can be challenging at first.
Those neural
Because
pathways.
you
they're
don't know
made,
anything
but
else.
it takes a while to create new neural pathways.
Yeah, but I believe that
Which
you
is why I
have to be
don't
open
think
to
about
it.
the rose thing. Because, like you said, if
Well-
you say imagine a rose, it's impossible to not imagine a rose.
Yeah,
Right. I'm seeing
Well-
a rose right now as soon as you say it.
that's me too. But there are people like that. But it also makes sense when you talk about different types of people who do mediumship, because some people who do mediumship are not good at seeing images in their mind. They won't see images. Sometimes they have auditory. Sometimes they hear things, and that's how they get the information. Some people see things, and that's how they get the information. Or it's a blend between all of them, and that's how they get the information. So really,
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, a blind person wouldn't be able to visualize things,
Yeah,
not
They-
unless they have an NDE. Blind people that have NDEs, by the way, get vision often.
yeah, and
They get
You mean somebody who's like born blind, who's never seen?
yeah, but
correct.
it's hard
Completely
for them.
blind people have
Yeah.
360 vision when they get up there, and they report 360 vision, and it's like a miraculous thing, and they
Okay, please send me that video because I need to watch that. I didn't even
Okay.
think about a blind person having an NDE.
Yeah, and the thing is that some of them, it's hard
You gotta
for them
watch
to
others.
describe, because how do you describe when you haven't seen your whole life, you know? So that's
Wow.
how do you describe what you're seeing or how do you describe what sight is? Because it is different than a normal person trying to describe, oh, I saw a rose. And
honestly, I think they probably describe it better than a person with vision, because the person with vision has just as much trouble to describe it. That they're trying to say that our language doesn't fit the words. It's not the same as vision.
Well, there is in the book with Jeffrey Long, he has an entire section on blind people who have had NDEs and its implications, because you say it's all in the mind or people are just seeing things, but what about people who haven't seen anything for a lifetime and then have an NDE? One particular woman, not in the book, but there's just one particular woman that I've seen a video on. She had an NDE, and the only reason she knew that it was her is because of the ring she wore. And she's familiarized herself with that ring by touching it all the time, because, you know, they work through different senses, touch. But she said vision actually scared her because she's never seen anything before. So it's just, it's like a different concept. So when she tries to describe certain things, it's still a little different than how someone would describe something, because they can't necessarily say, oh, that was red, it was red, because they don't know what color is. You know, they don't see in color because they're blind, you know, things like that. So that's where but they're still describing what we would call sight, which is very, very compelling.
Yeah, to add to that, multiple personality people, multiple personality disorder, Rupert Spira talks about that a little bit. And Rupert Spira is one of my favorite spiritual leaders. He just kind of looks inside himself and introspects and figures things out just on his own. He doesn't need people to theories or anything to tell him what's real. He just looks inside and figures it out. And I love that. And he's got so many good realizations. Anyway, he says that multiple personality disorder people are great indications of how our universal consciousness can be split up into all these separate people, and that we feel separate. And in multiple personality disorder, when one personality is blind, which is a common case. I'm a psychology major, and I remember there's cases of having one personality where you can't see, and one personality where you can see, and they hook up the brain waves, and that miraculously their brain, all the visual areas of the occipital lobe, the visual area of the brain, shuts down when their personality goes to the blind one. It doesn't even operate. No electrical signals.
That's insane.
Which indicates that they're not making.
That's probably not the right word to choose, but
they have Bashar, the channel.
Word. What'd you say?
What? You talking to me or?
Josie, I couldn't hear the words you said.
I just said, "Oh wow, that's insane," and then I was like, "That's probably not the best word to use to describe that." But we're talking about people with multiple. Anyway, carry on, move on.
It's my theory, my ongoing theory, that the brain it doesn't create consciousness. Like, I figured that out now from all this NDE stuff and everything. I've figured out brain doesn't create consciousness. It almost seems like it's a symbol for what's going on mentally, and that if you don't see those parts of the brain aren't firing.
A symbol or like a vehicle?
Great question. It's either a symbol of what's happening in the mental world, it's a physical representation of mental processes, or it's actually physical and it's receiving consciousness like an antenna.
I feel like I would, that resonates a little bit more with me, the second one, yeah.
Bashar has actually said, the channeler, he's mentioned that, because somebody asked him about multi-personality disorder, and he said that because each personality works on a different set of principles and beliefs and all of that stuff, the actual biology of the individual will change depending on the personality coming through. He says, so one personality could have like cancer and another personality not have the cancer, and when you observe the person and you check in on them, the cancer's not there. And it completely changes, which is really profound, because it's starting to say that, like, you have to start also looking at your belief systems, like what you believe to be true, because that one personality can actually believe something and have a completely different outlook and a completely different biological makeup than the other personality. So what does that have to say about people who don't have multiple personality disorder and think certain thoughts or have certain belief systems in place? And because thoughts are also energy, and it kind of goes into the laws that we were talking about in the previous episode. What you put out is what you get back. So like what you think
Right.
about, you draw in towards yourself, and how you perceive the world is also what affects your reality. Not
The laws
everyone
of
else's,
attraction, yeah.
yeah, not everyone else's reality, but your reality. And there's a book called All Things Can Be Healed. And it was about this guy who had gotten throat cancer. And he went on this whole journey learning about the chakra system and how his throat chakra center was out of alignment because he was someone who didn't really express how he felt about things. He didn't express those things. And in so doing, over time, that energy became stifled, and eventually he got the throat cancer. But once he changed the energy, the throat cancer went away, but they told him he was going to die, but he didn't. And he just changed how he ate, he changed his diet, he also changed how he expressed himself. And that goes into play with other NDEers who've described that they've been told by beings telling them to go back that energetically, if you can fix the energy, the illness can go away. Because everything
Yeah.
is energy.
Yeah, Josie, I told Christian this before, but I was really overweight when I was a kid.
Mm.
I was like 200 pounds, and I was a foot shorter than I am. I had a big round face and a round body. I looked like a Piper boy.
I'm
When I was
200
really young?
now. I can relate.
Okay. Well, but anyway, I hit rock bottom at age 15 of my life, and I lost a bunch of weight over summer. I lost 50 pounds in 3 months.
Wow.
And it was that, what Christian's saying is definitely that. I changed I changed inside. I changed my spirit. I didn't describe it as my spirit at the time, but I got a bunch of friends that were really active, and I just started thinking like thinking like them, and thinking like I'm a skinny person, basically. And that's how I lost weight. And now, to this day, I don't have to watch what I eat, and I barely have to work out whenever I sort of feel like it. There's no stress or no pressure at all for me on working out or staying healthy, and I just stay healthy. And I've learned how to stay healthy through setting my intention in my mind. That spiritual can lead. You can lead with spiritual, and it makes a dramatic effect.
Well, I think that, people who have trouble seeing this as a spiritual thing could see it as a physical thing as well, with its, you're changing your habits. I started last year. Okay, so I've been I had been a negative Nancy for like most of my life. And it's just, why does this always happen to me? Everything always, messes up. Plans are always ruined. Just very negative all the time. And watching these spiritual people that are talking about the law of attraction, manifestation, affirmations. And at first I'm just thinking like, okay, whatever, like lying to yourself and telling yourself that you're beautiful or that you're powerful or that you're worthy doesn't make it true. And at least that's what I thought. And I started to, there was just a few people that kept saying, like, even if you don't believe it, just start telling it to yourself. Just start saying it. And eventually you will believe it. And I know that, when people say negative things to you and tell you you're ugly all the time or you're stupid, after a while you start to believe it. And I knew that. So I was like, well, why can't the opposite be true? And I started talking kinder to myself and trying to see things from a new perspective. When something goes wrong, I try to see it as a challenge or a hurdle that I'm going to get through instead of this is the end of everything. And I have become more of a positive person, and it's taken a while and I still have to work at it. But if you see it in a physical way, you just think, okay, you're changing a habit. And over time you create this new habit. And then spiritually, you could see it as, just affirmations or whatever. And, that you're changing your insides, or you're changing, how you said your spirit. So either way you could say it, that would work if people struggle with seeing that through a spiritual lens. But it absolutely works. I'm more positive. I'm more happy. I love myself more. And challenges don't seem as daunting, but we're still getting there. So.
Thank you for sharing. I got to comment and say that I relate to you completely. I mean, I have plenty of areas where I have a negative self-image, and and the thing about law of attraction that I think we do wrong is that, well, first of all, we take it too far. Humans take everything too far.
Right.
You're embodied with negative energy by default. Humans will give you negative energy, and other people will, and you'll have it. And so there's the trick to law of attraction is to not resist negative feelings that come in. Like, you can't just say, I'm just going to ignore them. I know people like that, and I don't like those people that are so happy all the time, and they're always,
the toxic positivity.
Yeah, it's toxic. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's what it is. Toxic. Yeah. And if you give them some real negative news, they're like, that doesn't vibe with my mindset. I can't hear it.
You're right.
But I think the trick is that you have to have the mindset. You have to have a positive mindset. But when negative stuff comes in, you have to like a lot of these NDEers say, you have to embrace the emotion.
Yeah, and it's okay to feel it.
Yeah, it's okay to feel it.
It's okay. You're here to experience that.
Yes, and no matter how high.
What'd you say, Chris?
It's also called spiritual bypassing.
Spiritual bypassing?
Oh. Yeah, that's what it's called.
No matter how much you progress in life, you will always feel the same insecurities. No matter how much you progress. Even if you're on the top of the food chain in society, you have these insecurities, and they come in the form of negative energy. And so regardless of where you get to, you'll always battle the same things. That's the kind of the real gotcha of life.
I sort of disagree a little bit.
Insecure all the time.
I disagree a little bit. I mean, there's definitely, that's a very common theme, I think, because I think a lot of people are like that. Absolutely. Like, even me, I have little insecurities that pop up sometimes. But also what I've been learning, and this is what I've been aligning myself with a little bit more, is that every situation, every circumstance is in and of itself fundamentally neutral. So if we're the beings that give any situation or circumstance meaning, nothing is in and of itself built in negative, you know what I mean? But at the same time, it's okay to accept and deal with certain things as they come in, not saying you have to be like, oh, I'm going to ignore it because this is negative or I don't jive with it. Because I think there's also a safe space for that, because it's okay to walk away from something that doesn't serve you or you don't wish to participate in. But at the same time, if you're walking away from it because you don't want to deal with it, or you're not going to get the lesson, or you're running away from it, that's a different story. That's a different energy than just saying, I don't have to experience this because I don't want to, I don't, because there's certain things like.
Well, let me ask.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Let me ask you a question.
Sure,
Christian. We've talked about NDE world is like a dream world. It's like heaven. And we come here, and a lot of people think that Earth is like the hell. NDEers say that Earth is like the hell. Is the purpose to come here and just feel nothing but love? Or is the purpose to come here and also feel those terrible negative things that we aren't feeling up there?
Well, I think it's
Also.
to experience contrast, to experience those things and what we do with it. But once we become a society that actually learns to embody our emotions better, express them better, deal with them better, you'll start to move away from the things that it's going to be like this forever. We'll start to shift into a different reality. But when I say shifting to a different reality, I also believe in literal different realities where you'll have more realities where people resonate on that level, where they're not dealing with what we call negative things on a daily basis all the time. Whereas the reality where those negative things that we were just discussing still happen, but to people who are more on those levels who still have to learn to deal with them, like people who don't know how to forgive yet, or people who don't, because remember, like when we're talking in the NDE world, there is forgiveness already there. You can't take "I don't forgive you for what you did to me" into that realm. That doesn't happen. And it seems to be that the people
That's
or the
right.
souls that hold on to those resentments or those physical life things or hold on to that energy stay behind, and no one forces them to go over there. But this is my theory, that those are what we call ghosts and things, people who don't move on. But I don't think every ghost is like that. Sometimes I think those could be souls that are just bleeding in from the reality, or maybe
Oh,
the walls are
yeah.
weak. The walls
I
are
was
weak in that specific area and happen to see them.
I
That's
was
just,
I was talking about that with you the other day when I was like,
yeah.
I think like because I felt like I had this theory that people see these spooky scary ghosts, and it's because their vibration is lower, so it's matching
Oh,
your
yeah.
vibration. And then if you see what some people would call an angel or a good spirit or something, their vibration is higher, and you perceive it because your vibration is higher, that your vibrations have to match in order to see or experience those things on a different dimension.
Yep.
And it makes sense that your soul in this lifetime, it becomes too negative, and you get stuck here. You're obviously at a lower vibration in that other dimension, and that it can bleed into this one because we're at a low vibration in this dimension.
Yeah.
How did you
And
figure out the vibration thing? Did you figure that out on
Chris,
your own?
no.
Oh,
Chris
yeah.
Chris is telling me,
Okay.
like, my
Yes, I
thing
agree.
was
I agree.
energy, and he explained to me about the vibrations, which makes sense
Yeah.
because everything is down to our molecules. Our molecules are moving, they are
Yeah.
vibrating. We know that from
Movement is
material
light.
science, that
Yeah.
water runs because they're vibrating slower, and then it turns into steam because it's vibrating much higher, and the lower the vibration is, the more solid things are. That's how you have a solid object or a non-solid object.
yeah, if you vibrate at a certain frequency
Yep.
fast enough, you could actually go through a wall because you're vibrating at a much higher frequency.
Like if you get blown up, your molecules are definitely
That's why they show, like, I don't know if you've seen The Flash, but they show the Flash vibrating his hand so fast he can stick it through the wall. It's because
yeah,
of the vibration.
he's matching
That's
the
what they're
vibrations of those molecules. Yeah,
Yeah, and he's going faster than the molecules of the wall, and that's how he's
we're right. That's
able to
what I
go
mean.
through.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's how spirit functions. They're vibrating
Yeah.
at such a high frequency that you can't see them, hear them. But that's the thing with mediumship. And one medium said that a job as a medium is to actually vibrate at a higher frequency to meet the spirit who's trying to vibrate at a lower frequency, so you can meet in the middle to have a communication.
Yeah.
That's why he also says that John Holland was saying that in grief, it's actually harder for spirit, your deceased loved ones, to communicate with you because they're on a much higher frequency. They're immersed in that love. Like when
Yeah,
NDE,
yeah. You told me they have to lower their vibrations to be
yes,
able to communicate with us.
yeah, and it's harder. And like when my grandmother passed away, I didn't feel that grief. I had this understanding already. So as soon as I got home, everyone else was grieving. As soon as I got home, I was the only one who had that communication. As soon as I had her come in, and she told me that it felt good, and she threw herself on the bed like a teenager, and I just got so excited that it happened. I'm like, oh my God, it was awesome, because it's easier from that mindset. But it takes practice. It's okay to grieve. I'm not taking that away from anybody. Everybody's at their own level.
No, everybody does it in their own way. Yeah.
But yeah, vibration, everything is vibration. So there could be a planet in our solar system vibrating at a certain frequency that you can't see. It's invisible to you now, but it could be there.
Yeah, and most of the
Colors,
stuff is invisible to us because we only see this much of the spectrum.
yeah,
Right.
and for example, another example is if you look at a red car and a blue car, but they're the same make of car. Let's say they're both the same model, same everything, but each
Red
has
one's
a
clearly
different color.
better.
Yeah, I do like red too. It's
No,
one of
blue.
my favorite colors. But red is literally a different vibrational frequency than blue.
Mm.
It's a different frequency. It is a different.
And we also know that from material science that it's a wavelength. So longer and shorter wavelengths.
Yes, and green. Green is a very fast. It's the highest color in our visible spectrum. What we can see is the fastest, and red is very slow. It's actually the slowest, and that's why we can actually see red light going into black holes, because it's the slowest wavelength that there is that we know of going into it, and that's why it can be perceived.
Hey, I wanted to add two things on the previous subject. When I was saying the NDEers actually described that they don't think that this life here on Earth is about suffering. I remember two guys at least that were like, the point of it is not suffering. That's not why we come here as souls. They said you're right, okay. Sometimes you think that, like, why are we here on this Earth that has so many bad things? But they're saying the point of it is, the growth that occurs. A lot of NDEers say the point is actually to find ways to love people more. Mm-hmm. And so when I pose the question of, is the point here really just to be loving all the time? I think it actually is. It's to try to be loving even though there's all these negative energies and all these negative situations. That it's a way for our souls to exercise giving love even in the face of adversity. I think that's something.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the old adage you have when you're young. To even if situations are really hard, you need to be loving and caring to the people around you, and that's the right thing to do. At least that's kind of a moral high ground that I've always recognized.
I mean, I heard this a long time ago that what's the meaning of life is to give life meaning, and I think that for each person that can be different. So maybe it isn't to love people more for that specific person. Maybe there's some other meaning to life that they bring to the table. But I happen to resonate with, I personally would like to learn how to love more. So I agree with that. And from my perspective.
That seems to be the central message from NDEs about
it's
learning
very
how to
much
love.
The central.
Yeah, about learning how to love and
like,
love unconditionally.
It's almost as if I just want to say it just to be controversial. It's almost as if it's forced on us. Once you get to the NDE world, it's like, or do you want to be loving and go on to this wonderful place, or do you want to live down there in this horrible hell?
I don't know, but that's our choice, right?
Yeah,
it's a choice, but it seems like so obvious you'd want to pick the loving path.
You would think.
They come back and then they make it their life mission to try to find more opportunities to love other people. So I'm taking the hint. I'm just gonna.
This is
try
the
to love
perfect
people
time to go into what kind of society we would have if everyone had like an NDE. And some NDEers have actually brought this up. They're like, I wish everyone had an NDE because then all the the BS would stop. Because look at how we treat each other. And it's
Christian. Can I add one more random topic just right before we jump into that?
Sure. What's up?
Okay, I just wanted to get Josie's opinion too.
I'd love giving my opinion.
Water.
What now?
We said water earlier. You were saying water when we were talking about all these things. I think water is mystical and majestic. To me, there's like a spiritual experience when I'm in water, when I'm under the water, looking up at the dividing line.
You're weightless, so that there's a lot less gravity.
I heard a quote before I started studying NDEs that changed my perspective totally. I want to see what you guys think. The quote is, humans were created so water could walk on land.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Because we are 75% or 70% water. Our bodies are, or something like that.
Yeah.
We're constantly replenishing ourselves with water. We're putting water into ourselves. Water's inside of our brain when it's working, and inside of all of our things.
I mean,
And-
at least
and
at least on this
originated
physical plane,
everywhere.
you can't live without water and light and warmth. And of course, you get warmth from light. But yeah,
Exactly, but scientists have believed that life started in water, so it's like our
Mhm.
origins. We constantly putting it in our bodies, and what if we're just the vehicle for water? The life source is coming through water. If we tie that in with
so
NDE,
are you thinking that maybe like the source is water?
Yes,
Okay.
that's what I think. That's what I'm leaning towards. The soul is actually inside of something to do with the water. The water is a conduit of some. I don't know. Could
Or
be
the
totally
water
wrong.
of the womb. We all come from that as well. We're all swimming around and stuff before we're born. But you also mentioned, didn't you say something earlier when we first started? You were talking about light, and you were talking about the sun.
Yeah.
And
That's the other thing.
yeah.
Yeah, so water and the sun both seem so pivotal.
Mm.
And what was their relationship to the spirit world? I'm not satisfied with Kristen's answer of like, there's, whatever imaginations can create, there's lots of different realities for different. I just want to know what's the connection between the sun and the NDE world. And what's the connection between water and the NDE world? Are those
Did
things...
they mention the sun and the water a lot in NDEs? I have to admit, I probably haven't watched as many as you two have.
I've never heard of an NDE talking about the sun being there, but there are mentions of like waters, falls, rivers, and skies, and that being there. But that I've also heard Eben Alexander explain this, that the waterfall was more spectacular, more real, more better looking than the waterfalls that we have. And you could see that those waterfalls are what our waterfalls, like that central reality is the one that our little one reality is based off of. So it's just like you could see where you're like, oh, I see where we got normal waterfalls from. They're based off of these that are like much, much better, so that's how he described it.
My answer is that they never talk about any significance in water. It's merely a pretty thing that they're looking at while they're traveling. And same with sun. They never mention the sun, but they do mention the source coming at them, and it's always light. They measure the source as being light.
What I do know from different spirit guides coming through people through channel sessions, some people through their NDE sessions, is that everything is light. Everything. Even in the NDE world, everything is made up of light. Whether you're seeing plants, whether you're seeing water, whether you're seeing clouds, it's all made up of the same source, light energy. And also this reality is based off of light, which is where we get the holographic nature of the structure of this particular universe.
And you were talking about with like the CE5 thing that sometimes, aliens show up, but sometimes light beings show up. You mentioned light beings.
Oh yeah. For people who don't know what CE5 is, it's a protocol developed by Dr. Stephen Greer, where people go in groups and they meditate in specific areas like forests, mountains, like rural areas, no people nearby or anything like that, and they meditate for a while on kindness, love, peace, and all of that, and with the intention of actually communicating with some of these extraterrestrial beings that show up. And they do show up. Apparently they'll show up sometimes in crafts, sometimes they'll look like light orbs. He does say with the phenomena that not always are they ET, but sometimes spirits will show up. And you'll see them, and sometimes they'll capture them on camera. And one particular, we haven't watched this movie together yet, Kevin, they actually have a picture of a light being coming through, and you actually see the shape. I'll see if I can put it on the screen here. You'll see the shape of the light being, kind of looks like a rainbow. And you just see
you
the
showed
light
me that, didn't you?
Yeah, and sometimes you'll see these long, they look like tentacles, very light energy, going through the people, it's coming through their chest. And then they'll have people who have a Kundalini experience where they feel their chakras opening up, and then they feel connected to the universe after these beings come through.
It's also very painful. I want to point that out because we were talking earlier, like pain is somehow bad. I've always thought pain is good; it's part of life. But when he went through that Kundalini, Jeff, he said it was the most painful experience he's ever had.
Yeah. The people that I know who went through this particular experience, they didn't say they had any pain, so I can't say. But all I can only go off of what they said. But they say it was just like a tear-jerking, like very spiritual, emotional experience. And one particular guy, it was awesome. He was actually deaf, and one of these beings showed up in a craft. The craft was like floating down. It was like a red orb craft, and he was communicating with this being, he says, telepathically, and he said no one will ever convince him that this never happened, because he asked the being that before he left, could he do something about his hearing? And he didn't say anything about it, but the very next day, his hearing aids were bugging him, and he couldn't use them properly, so he took them out. But when he took them out to check if they were working properly, he noticed he could hear. And he gets emotional when he talks about this experience after having an interaction with one of these beings. And I've sent you videos, at least one of the videos I know I've sent you, where these beings have come down and landed at schools and communicated with children, talking to them about the importance of the environment and love and all of this stuff. And these are not just one or two students. This is like an entire school talking about this central message that falls in line with near-death experiences too, about the central message being love.
So I was just, it's funny because I do approach things more from a scientific or even a material scientific standpoint. And I believe that all of the spirituality, everything is eventually going to be explained on this realm by physical science. We just haven't got there yet.
They're actually studying these monks that have their brain waves are different than normal people. They're in the state of gamma, and they can do this normally. Just snap of a finger, that's just normal for them, and they're always in this state, and they can achieve what we would call supernatural abilities. But the regular people who aren't in gamma, who walk the normal everyday life, don't have that ability, and they still need to like consume food and still need to do the normal thing. But it's just it's like
I don't want to give up food.
Think
Food's great.
I think it's an awareness
Indeed.
level. Like once you get to a certain awareness level, and that's what it's like. And it's interesting because it's been described that certain beings from other places have gotten to a point where they don't consume food anymore because of this awareness level. It's like that's where eventually we're going.
I would miss it. I would miss food.
Well, you're coming from the awareness level of an awareness of eating and having and enjoying food. So you can't conceive of not having it. So it's just like,
yeah,
you know.
I appreciate, when you say that everything's connected. I definitely agree with that. But I'm still trying to make connections between this world and that other world that I now know about. Because, like I said, I think life is mostly illusions, and we're just getting less ignorant as we go. And I've just suddenly become less ignorant that there's another reality level. I want to know how it generates this world. What is the sun in relationship? Because there's not just one sun. But in NDE world, there's one source. There's one light that comes at you. It comes at everybody. And they know it's the one source. They know that. But in this world, there's the sun, and there's also another sun a little bit over there, and there's like millions of suns.
Yeah.
So why are there millions of suns here and only one over there? Is one question.
Because all the other worlds out there.
Yeah.
All the other planets, they need the sun. They need their sun. They need their central star.
It's all.
So the sun is not analogous to the source. It's not, because there's many suns. There's only one source.
Each sun, each rock, each person, each microbe is a part of the same one source. It all comes from the same being. And what's interesting is that even the planets are alive. They're alive, living beings. And in the last NDE that I watched, he talked about that the Earth, he could actually see the energy of the Earth, and he had the awareness that the Earth was actually a living being, and it was going through.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, and it's going through these changes, and a lot of people use different names. One popular name is Gaia, like Mother Gaia, and but eventually we're going to come to that awareness level where we don't just see it as, you know, a planet like a rock.
It's amazing that we've not been able to realize that it's a dynamic living thing.
Yeah,
Like how blind do you have to? How many blinders do you have to put on
yeah.
to think that we're the only alive thing? Honestly.
Yeah.
Part of the awakening, people waking up and getting that awareness, which is, it's great that it's happening. It's great that it's happening, I think, because we're going to go into a much different place. It's already happening.
So, let me know if you guys think of any more theories on why there's a human body around this water, and the human body makes it better because we have senses, maybe.
Mhm.
But water is the original form of life. If you think of any connections there,
At least our
I'd love to
form of
hear.
life. Because I
Right.
also think that, I said, or at least our form of life, because I imagine there are beings that don't work the same as we do, or they may not have water. They may have a different type of life that exists that gives them their life, and ours may be poisonous to them or something like that.
I think that, here's what I think. My ongoing theory is that in the NDE world, there's all these souls, and they're kind of divided up from a primary consciousness somehow.
Right.
But you have lots of souls out there, and your soul persists even when your body dies. We know that.
Mm.
When the human body dies, your soul goes, and it's still there. They're souls. The souls are the basis for everything.
Yes.
If life exists somewhere, there had to have been a soul injected.
Mhm.
That there's no life without a soul, and then even like basic life forms have a soul.
Everything
and
has
but there's other
consciousness.
things that don't have a soul, like tables and stuff, that some people would argue have a soul, but they clearly don't exhibit the same characteristics.
Well, you got to look
Table.
into that Dolores Cannon thing that I sent you, because she does hypnotherapy, past life regression. She's done abduction cases, and I sent it to you specifically because it's the one where I just happened to be listening to this. I'm like, oh my God, she said it. Yeah, that's what I was trying to explain to Kevin. She said that through her work, she's discovered through people getting regressed. And she doesn't just do normal regression. She says, I go to deeper levels of subconscious so that people are in a trance state. And she says, if you can get them to that level, you will get a lot more information about what the other life is like outside of the physical body. You'll get more access to different knowledge. And she says that everything, and we haven't fully understood this yet, everything is alive. Everything has consciousness. It's just a different level of consciousness. And I sent you that one specifically because I laughed because somebody asked her, well, what about rocks? And she said, yes, even rocks. And
That's what I was going to
Yeah.
bring up. Yeah.
and you can
Yeah.
have the awareness level of a rock if you so choose. And there are reasons that souls may choose to experience that, maybe not forever.
Yeah.
And the host, actually, George Norrie,
Doesn't make
asked her,
sense. It still doesn't make sense. I gotta say, it doesn't make sense, because if a rock has a soul, then a little tiny piece of a rock also has a soul, and the piece of that piece has a soul too. That
Everything
means
is
there's
alive.
infinite souls.
yes,
But there can't be infinite souls, right?
you're placing a limitation on all that is.
There can't be infinite souls.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
See, no, I'm right in between you guys right now, because like I'm seeing both of your perspectives, because to me it's hard for me to wrap my brain around like a rock has a soul or a table has a soul. But at the same time, with Chris saying you're putting a limitation on it, it's just maybe it does, and we just don't understand it yet.
And like materialist science says, we're just more complex creatures. That we obviously are different from the rock or the table.
Yeah.
Very obvious. that we're
In a
different.
physical way,
So you
yes.
can't say-
Yeah. We chose to have a different
Yeah,
experience.
physically, but also the outward appearances of thought and internal reflection and trying to figure out what you are. Everything, nothing. The table doesn't do any of that. Even the cat or a lesser form of animal. I love cats, so sorry, I didn't mean to say lesser form. Less.
I was about to
less
say,
conscious.
hey.
Anyway, you can see the different levels if you just go down in the animals. They're not thinking as self-reflective.
Like they don't have the capacity for abstract thought.
Yeah.
Oh, that we can perceive though.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know?
Think about how an extraterrestrial being a million years ahead of us may think about how we perceive the universe, and they're like, they don't get it yet. There are different humans are a different level of awareness than where we're at right now, but they're still alive, experiencing things in their own understanding of it. But everything comes from source, which is alive in and of itself.
Yeah, but when I say it's impossible to have infinite souls, what I'm really saying is that means there are no individual souls. If there are infinite souls, that's the same thing as there being only one soul.
Technically,
Like there
yeah.
can't be infinite. That's what Rupert Spira says. There's one consciousness.
Yeah,
It's divided up into everything.
yeah.
So then it's more like a wave, you know? There's consciousness that's going through things as a wave, and the rock has a subtle amount of consciousness in it because it exists, perhaps.
Yeah.
Not convinced. But I have much more. I'm the same size as the table. Let's talk about that for a second. I'm the same size, but I'm much more complex. And my soul that says it's Kevin, I clearly know what part of me is Kevin. I bet the table doesn't know what part of it is the table. It's like halfway hooked into the ground, and if I just modify it a little bit, it's different. I don't know if it has a sense of itself, even at a lower conscious level.
Well, one of the things. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that I'd heard this before, and it just kind of clicked with me. Is that we're here in our different perspectives because we are the world and the universe experiencing itself.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So, I mean, this table I have here, I like this table. This is a good table. But as far as I know, the table doesn't know it's a table, as far as I know. And so the table isn't experiencing itself from my perspective, but I know that I'm experiencing this table. I can touch it. I can feel it. I can see it. Seems to be great craftsmanship, and my plants are on it. And but if it does have a soul, if it does have a consciousness, it's obviously at a lower vibration than we're at, and can't experience itself like I'm experiencing it.
Yes, that's
And
a great way to put it.
I have a lot to say.
The only thing I was going to say was that what Dolores Cannon had actually explained about like being a rock, for example, is that it's a very slower vibration. And she's like, I've had this come up in some of my sessions, even though I may not be particularly looking for it, but it does come up where people, she's like, I've done so many thousands of people and they've all talked about this. And it's just a slower, why a soul would choose to do that is because it may need to have more restriction on itself to see the contrast between something else. And she says it's a much slower vibration, much lower density vibration reality than what we perceive. But think about it this way, is the last thing I'll add to this, is that everything is vibrating, which is moving energy. So it's doing something. It's not just static. It's actually, even though we have the perception of it just being static, it's not just static. It's energy oscillating around itself to create what we call a rock, a table, or whatever it is. It's doing something. So it has to be putting energy in to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Hey, I just had to say this because, I think it's actually, the rock thing, I don't care if rocks get hurt. I'll form a rock into a tool for myself. I'll form wood into a table. So we're constantly modifying all these material things, believing they don't have souls. Like, I don't believe that it has the same feeling as me, so that's why I do it. If it was like obvious that it was a person, I would be more hesitant to chop it in half and turn it into a table. Now, I just want to say one more thing about that. Like when I grew up, little ants that were just I would mess with ants and hurt them and stuff and just play with them when I was a kid.
Yeah, who hasn't crushed a bug before?
What I'm saying is we automatically don't see lower souls, like whether it's an ant or it's a table, we don't relate to it, and
I
thus
think
we
that's
treat
because
it.
humans are kind of inherently kind of selfish and self-centered, and
Yeah, it could be.
yeah. I mean, if you, because there are some people
No, I
that
don't
they
think
will.
so. It was natural for me when I was a kid, messing with ants. Nobody instilled that in me. I don't think it was just something exploring.
Yeah.
I didn't care about goals. I didn't care about.
I think it's the level of the soul, though, because there are people who come in completely empathic, very, very caring towards like someone, like, and they could be at a very young age, and like, why are you crushing those ants? And they have that awareness level, and then they can share that with you. But now, with what you know now, you can also look at the world very differently than how you used to.
So then, that illusion that we're all separate is also what creates a lack of compassion for other souls, even if
Yes.
they're a
I think so.
smaller
Yes.
life form.
Yes.
That makes sense. Then you can almost consider souls being in everything. If maybe that's the best model to take. If we think we have souls and we're like, the table doesn't have a soul, where do we draw the line?
Yeah.
And something in between could have a soul. It just consider that everything has a soul, but that got to make you feel bad, right?
I guess it depends on your perspective of it.
Yeah.
You got, sorry, don't hate me for this. Continue, and I'll be right back.
Sure.
But,
Yeah, Christian, if we can jump into the other topic too. Do you have any more thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I think that it maybe there's also stuff we don't understand because it's never been explained, so I don't know. But it's possible that using
Don't you wonder?
using a rock as a tool, for example, like does it hurt the rock? I don't know,
Yeah,
because maybe from the level of rock, it may not feel the way that we feel because it's a different level of awareness.
Or it doesn't think pain is bad. Like
Yeah.
I go back to saying pain's not bad.
We're thinking about it also from a human perspective, and we're like placing our human perspective onto a rock because it could have that awareness and it could have a different level of awareness. I don't know, but I think it's a different level of awareness. Sure.
So since we're waking up now, everybody's waking up, and pretty soon maybe we'll stop treating animals so badly like we do in all the slaughter farms. Possibly we'll change that. If we do change that, where's the limit of that empathy that we're now showing for all those animals that we're slaughtering now? Do we then extend that empathy and now show it to every single physical thing that we interact with?
I think so. I think it's a process, though. It's going to happen over time, and more people are becoming like, I don't know about you, but when I was younger, the whole vegan wave thing was not a thing. So it's just, now there's like vegan everything everywhere. They have places. I'm like, what a concept, right? And it's becoming
I'm trying to ignore it.
Yeah.
It's not in my law.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's happening whether you want it to or not, and it's just this thing that's happening, and people are having more awareness about the environment, the things they consume, how animals are being treated, and all of that stuff, And I'm even slowly trying to like stop eating like red meat and things like that because of not just the environment, but also the animals, and they have feelings. I still haven't moved away from chicken. I'm just like
By the way, on that note. NDEers never describe being blamed or feeling guilt over all the animals that we've slaughtered. But there was one or two NDEs that I remember where they said they were able to see all the pain and suffering that we've caused animals.
Yes.
But there was no judgment at all.
You get that even in the life review.
Bad that they did it. They weren't feeling bad that they did it. And this is what I'm trying to get at. When we torture those little ants, when we slaughter these animals, and you get up to NDE world, we don't feel bad that we did it. There's something crazy about that, or just profound.
My perspective has changed so much that even though I don't like certain bugs, for example, you can ask Josie, like she's been over and there's been a bug, and then I will vacuum it, and instead of just killing it like I used to, because I'm like, go to hell, like I used to just kill them. Now with this level of awareness, I'm like, like
I save them. I take them outside.
Exactly. That's what I started doing. If possible.
I don't.
I mean,
I don't.
Sometimes it's challenging to save it if it's depending on the type of insect. But
It takes so much effort to save those damn little things.
if I
I have like a
can,
box to save
yeah,
now.
if I can, I will. But I just use the hand vac. I'm like, "Zoop." I'm like, I probably freaked you out, and then I open it outside. So that's what I do now.
I've always thought, first of all, the golden rule is real. I figured that out a long time ago. What you do to other things can sometimes come back to you. Will often come back to you. And if you suck up a bug in a vacuum cleaner, just be prepared to be sucked up in a giant vacuum cleaner yourself later. Right?
In a sense. Yeah.
In a sense. Yeah,
In
exactly.
a sense, yeah.
But I mean, that's the course of life. That's.
Absolutely.
But again, not being afraid of suffering or not being afraid of the pain, and also death is a good thing. So it's not something you should be fearful of. I don't think.
But it does make you sad. Like I don't like that. I don't like that my cat isn't here. I want him back. I want him back all the time, even though, it's just from my perspective. I know that, if I die, I'm going to see him again because the souls are going to be there. They're here now. We just, I can't perceive him in the same way. But if it were up to me, I wouldn't have had him die. It's death can still be hard, even if we know that you're not really gone.
I also think it's also because as a society, we're in the beginning stages of just understanding that. So we haven't fully accepted that as a whole, as a society, to understand that we don't fully die, because this is still debated despite the NDEs and despite all of that information. But on a positive note, it's good to know that there are NDEers who talk about meeting their animal counterparts on the other side and having an even better interaction with them than they had when they were in the physical. And they actually have like a telepathic type of communication where they can feel what the animal felt, and they can go over memories together, and they can have all of that understanding. But we're still young to that concept. So it's like when you ask someone to accept it and not like feel emotions or something for losing someone, it's still hard. But I think that eventually, as a society, when we get there and we fully encompass all of this knowledge and awareness with near-death experiences and what they're telling us, and that we don't actually die, that we're all eternal beings, is that we'll eventually celebrate. And as we raise in vibration and have that greater awareness level, seeing spirits and communicating with spirits is going to be an everyday thing for everyone, where you'll be able to communicate on that level. And the last thing I'll say on this is that Bashar says his civilization has gotten to a point where not only do they have very long lifespans, but when someone decides to cross over, they celebrate, and they actually are still in communication with the being that just transitioned into the afterlife. They're still in communication in a more apparent way than it is down here, because they have that awareness level. But we're not quite there yet.
Are you getting closer and closer to the idea that everything is mental? That since you can visit people anytime?
Yes.
Are you convinced that there's no physical world?
Yes.
This is all an illusion?
Because
I'm starting to...
Nothing is truly solid.
Did you read my paper, that one that I sent you on free will versus determinism?
I did a while ago, yeah.
At the end, I described that I thought that maybe it's all mental, that all the physical objects that we see, that we interact with, it's obviously a shared world that we all live in.
Yep.
Right? People don't talk about that enough. It's like when you talk about spirituality, the obvious undeniable fact is that there's a shared world that we can measure and manipulate, and that's how we've derived science, materialist science from. We've chosen to say that it's material stuff, right? So, but it could just be mentally being made up. That even materialist science believes that it's actually being made up. It actually doesn't look like what it looks like to what our brain makes it look like. But But it could be that there's no material at all, that this is just a shared mind, and that mind is very consistent compared to our mind. And that I don't know about, because as I said in our other podcast, that kind of boggles my mind, how our minds are so unpredictable and unstable, and we can have new emotions come in and out all the time. We can change our mind, but the physical world is very stable and persists through all of our emotions and all of our mood swings and everything.
All of this boggles my mind. All of it.
Yeah, right? Is this material world, this physical world that's so stable, is that somebody else's mind?
Like Source's mind.
Yeah.
Could be.
Yeah.
I don't think it would be impossible.
Bashar says that
He says, like my cat visiting me in my dream half awake state, and it felt real. And other things like when I can lose all the blood out of my head and time slows down and feels like there is no time. There's a lot of things that seem to point that it's all illusions again, but that it could just be all being made up in some greater mind, which always was my intuitive.
Sorry.
That was always my intuitive feeling on it. Even when I was a kid, I thought there was one big mind, and we're all part of one big mind. Because if you zoom into our own mind, you can see little cells, and they look like little things too.
Yeah.
You can zoom into them. Like it seems obvious. It's all goes down in the chain, and it's greater minds.
It's cool to wonder about all this stuff, but it's also cool that people who have NDEs will often describe asking these kinds of questions and having the answers to the questions. And they say it's not just being told the answer, but having the actual knowledge become a part of them so that they fully comprehend and understand it. But it's like down here, we conceptualize and we're like, I wonder, and how is this possible? And how are all these things happening? But that's why I also like when they say that death is like waking up from a dream.
But I'm still asking you, Christian. I'm still going to keep bugging you about this until you give me an answer, which is
it's all mental.
Right, exactly. But is that indicated from NDEs?
It's indicated.
Do they say? Are there people saying that?
Actually, yeah. Evan touched on this, and he said that the universe is like one big thought.
It's like what?
One big thought. And there are other physicists that have said that as well. That it's like a big thought that's happening. And Bashar and his civilization has said that it takes consistency and concentration, like a focus, to create the reality that we're experiencing and to keep it this way. Because if the focus is lost, this reality would fall apart. The reality that we're in right now, the physical reality, would fall away. And that's why there is a conscious effort to keep this reality the way it is in terms of making this experience what we call consistent. Like I'm still here on Earth today. Oh, I'm still here on Earth today. But it's a mental thing. Nothing's truly physical. Everything's energy, and there's a concentration that creates this reality, as I understand it.
Well, I know we totally... No, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I just, I still, despite those explanations, it still doesn't make sense to me that how consistent the physical world can be. Why aren't the laws of physics changing every week? Just like minds do. That is a good point.
Well, as I understand it, when we apply, certain realities have certain laws. So, for example, some of these the laws are never really broken. And I'm going to bring in different topics to try and elaborate on this, because it can't just be answered very quickly as I understand it. So, when we were talking about the different laws and how everything changes except the first four laws, that means you can go into a different reality where the physics are different than this reality. But in this reality, this is the type of things that we have to abide by, the type of physics. So what Dr.
Okay.
Stephen Greer describes when he talks about some of these beings who come down here in ships and stuff like that, he says, you know why you see them showing up in orbs of light and sometimes they don't just look like metal? He's like, one, they're protecting themselves because they don't want to be attacked. And he's like, you would actually go through them. If they actually come down to be in the physical, they have to apply by our laws, meaning they would have to embody like a physical body that is solid, but then they could also be hurt physically. They have to abide by certain laws when they come here. And that's why some of them don't reveal themselves or get too close for particular reasons, or they'll show up as lights instead of actual like solid objects. But the laws are never broken. But there are other things we can do with a greater awareness of those laws, like UFO craft flying and not breaking the sound barrier, even though you would say, wait a minute, that's defying the law of physics, when it actually isn't.
Yeah.
It's just a different level of understanding.
Okay, so that's an answer to my question about the consistency of this
reality
world.
has this consistency. There are other realities that have other consistencies that may not be completely different from the physics that we currently experience. We, upon agreement, decided to experience this specific reality where I could throw an apple up into the air and it comes down. Or we were around the sun, that gives us certain energy. But that's the agreement. It's like a consensus, like, I don't want to say hive mind, but it's like a what do they call that? Like a mass consciousness agreement for the world. Like there's a word I'm looking for, but
Can you say that, if you zoom into our own bodies and you see the structure going on there, the cells are moving really fast around, interacting with each other, but our whole body is much more stable than the individual cells themselves. Like we have over the course of an hour, our blood flow is approximately the same, and things are working fairly consistently. And the cells inside, they might have little mood changes and stuff all the time, every microsecond. And maybe their relationship to us is the same as our relationship to this physical world. Would you agree with that?
Yes, but then also just want to throw in that those cells are reacting according to you and what you emit, and that's why we start going into the realm of like what you actually embody. You can actually make yourself sick. Like some NDEers are shown that they got sick because of their viewpoint on the reality. So we're that powerful that we can actually change the structure of our own reality and the structure of our own biology just with a belief.
Yeah, so it goes back to if something's really big and it moves really slow, it seems really consistent, but it actually is changing. Even the Earth has moods, so to speak.
So
Yeah.
Stretched out.
Yeah, and another thing to talk about consistency is, which is I find fascinating, by the way, they've actually done studies where we'll have this consistent reality, right? Yeah, every day everybody gets up, goes to work, drives, eats, sleeps, whatever. And then they did
Donald
these
Trump
studies.
president.
Yeah.
Weird.
But, yeah, they did this study on people, like large groups of people all meditating together on world peace and love and all of that stuff. And there was an actual change in the actual world. So, materialist science would be like, oh, coincidence, that's not possible. But they've done this numerous times. And each time they'll notice that crime rates drop. There are less people like being killed. There's more peace for an extended period of time. And it's every.
What's the study? What did they do?
They're studying large groups of people meditating on peace and love and all of that stuff. And it's just showing that energetically, like if we go there, if a large amount of people came together to do something, even though we're all sitting down and we're not physically interacting with the world, it has the direct effect on the world around us. And it has a direct effect on even people, even if people aren't aware of it. People seem to be more peaceful, even without realization.
By the way, we have to do that rice thing. I want to do that.
Oh,
We should
yeah.
start it today.
Oh yeah, the rice thing. I have to get some mason jars.
Yeah. I genuinely would like to do that. I have rice. Do you have rice?
Dr. Emoto, yeah, I have rice.
I have rice.
We're gonna
I think
fill
you told
rice.
me about this. I completely forgot what this was.
Oh, the Dr. Emoto with the,
Yeah.
I think it's Emoto or Emoto. He discovered that
Emoto.
our thoughts, are energy, and they have a direct effect around us. So to test this, he put like little bits of water, like a little bit of water with rice, and he used 3 jars. In each jar, and I'll put it up on the screen here, is labeled love. One is labeled love, one is labeled hate or fear, and the last one is labeled neutral. So it's the control, or control, you can call it control. The control you completely ignore. But the one labeled love, every day he would send loving thoughts, words, phrases to it. And then to the one that said hatred, he would send, fear-based thoughts. I hate you, you're worthless, you suck, you're never going to be good enough, things like that. And then over a long period of time, after they came back and measured them. One guy even on YouTube did it for 2 years. And he showed you like that the one labeled love looked completely different than the one labeled hatred, which is dark and dirty and moldy. And then the one that had control, so no interaction whatsoever, was even worse. So it's weird because it's like also showing you that even sending energy of hatred, giving someone attention with hatred is better than completely ignoring them, which also goes into how babies that don't have interactions whatsoever with people end up having problems. We need this physical interaction, this energy exchange, and it shows us how powerful our thoughts actually are.
And I'll just point out, exactly on that note, that to do this exercise and really understand for yourself, all you have to do is say those words. The word, I love you, and then also the word, I hate you, I want to kill you. Just saying it is so disturbing.
Well, I feel like we lost our segue before, but I feel like we got it back now with how energy affects other energy, how we all affect each other and the experiences that we go through. And I know we were going to talk about what if everybody had an NDE experience and how that would affect everyone and how we live in society today.
Great segue. Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny. It's so funny. Even just bringing up the energy, it changes the energy. Mm. And that's actually the point I was trying to make with the rice thing. You don't even have to do the rice experiment to know that you're literally creating reality just by the energy that you choose to focus on.
Yeah.
If you do the hate thing, boy, it can really sour everything.
Yeah.
But anyway, we were talking about this separateness versus connectedness. I think that, like that one Senate thing you sent me, Christian, which is awesome. Old people talking about it in the Senate about we need to adopt this new connectedness mindset.
Oh, right.
But he was just reporting NDE things in an official setting, which is, I think, what needs to be done.
Oh, the citizen.
But I think
he was talking about the citizen hearing. He was talking about the theological implications because the congressman had asked him, "What are the theological implications of this knowledge and the ETs interacting with us?" And he was talking about we're coming to the understanding that we all have souls, and that's an actual thing and not just like a made up wishful thinking religious kind of thing.
So I can speak to this real clearly because for 38 years of my life I thought we were all separate and that whatever I do to somebody else does not affect me at all. And I truly believe that. And I believe that there would be blackness after death. And that mindset, it produces all kinds of behaviors. The obvious one is that you're just willing to be greedy and willing to take things for yourself, even if it's hurting other people or hurting the whole. And by the way, there's a thing called game theory, which I've been studying and thinking about for a while because it's so it's evident in every area of life. It is that, okay, there's this experiment that I did in graduate school when I was getting my master's in business. They had everybody choose on a piece of paper whether they wanted to be an X or a Y. And if you're an X, you'll get $200 right away just for being an X. You get $200, but you'll also stop all the Ys from getting any money.
Like ever?
You know? Right, ever. But if you put a Y, you'll get $400, which is more, twice as much. But everybody has to put a Y. And then everybody wins a lot more. But everybody has to put a Y. So if anybody puts a few X's, they get a little money and they get away with it, but everybody else loses everything and gets nothing. This is also evident in the new Batman movie, which is not new anymore, where there's the two big boats and Joker put a bomb on each boat. People will remember this popular movie. And gave the detonator to the opposite boat and said, if you blow up the other boat, you will live. But if you don't blow up the other boat, I'll blow both of you up. It's kind of like an inverse, but there's game theory that this is a real phenomenon, and that the theory is there are Y people and there are X people. The X people are people that will take and take for themselves and sacrifice the whole constantly, you know? And there are Y people that they will just do whatever's good for the whole, and they will sacrifice their own personal just to do what's good for the whole. And there's a balance of those X's and Y's in every dynamic system in the world. All animals have a balance of that. Humans have balance, but they found a balance in like nature itself. It's not just human related. Okay, so that's very significant. But humans, the balance is that it needs to be mostly Y's, but there needs to be about 25% X's for a system to work at its greatest capacity. There's actually a need for the X's, the greedy people that are taking for themselves, but it needs to be mostly Y people.
What's the need?
I don't...
To keep things interesting?
I'll get to that in a sec, but all I know is that if you increase the amount of X's beyond the 25 to 30% threshold, and it's like half X's and half Y's, the entire system will deteriorate fairly rapidly. And if it's all X's, it'll deteriorate really fast. If it's all Y's, it doesn't operate that well either. It's kind of like the yin and the yang. If there's no light at all in the darkness, or no darkness at all in the light, it's too much. But if it's nothing but Y's, the system doesn't operate as well. Yeah.
Sorry.
And I saw your cat a while ago, Josie, but then I lost my camera again. I can't see you for a while, but...
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that was Opal. She just wanted some attention. And then Odie came up for some attention too, but...
And my overall point is just that there is actually a balance that is healthy of greedy people versus connectedness people. And so I want to, again, point out, and so everybody remembers, that the separation is an illusion that was put on us, or maybe agreed by all of us or something. But the fact that we believe we're separate, that we can actually believe that, like I did for 38 years, I actually believe that, even though it wasn't real. That there's something to that there's a functional reason to that. But I think that if you look at America, I would call it like 70% X's. I would say most people are greedy, maybe 60% or something.
I would too.
Right?
So that's how I perceive it anyway.
Yeah, and it's like, I think that's how it is, but then it's also changing. Like, as people start waking up and coming to that awareness, it's kind of like a domino effect that's just gonna like take over. Because I honestly think that there are more good people in the world than there are the more negative people. I think there's more of us, and it's gonna happen because it's like once we have that awareness, that realization, then it's gonna seem pointless to hurt your neighbor, you know, or to take more from the neighbor because you're really only hurting yourself. You know, and
well, okay, but wait, but X's, okay, so there is a functional reason for X's. When they take for themselves, they grow stronger at the expense of everybody else. but they do have a future, and they come back around, and they're strong entities. And what do X's do in real life? I think sometimes they turn into like Bill Gates, and they give back in the end. I feel like he was forced to give back, and he gives. But like they do actually produce rewards for the rest of the world, even though they were very greedy growing up. A lot of wealthy people are like that. Very greedy growing up. Once they
An NDE, and then completely change.
Once they capture all that power and all that greed, then they start giving back. I'm just saying there is a functional reason for X's. But
I think it's part of the lesson too, because we
Yeah.
need the contract to grow, and then eventually we won't need that lesson anymore.
we all know there's a reason for greedy people and X's. Even if we all realize that NDEs were real, my argument is that there would still be little kids who go out there and be greedy, even if they know. Because there's something about it that, like
I
Anne
feel like
Ryan,
not even just little kids, but adults too. I mean, you can put evidence right in front of someone's face, or you can try to share something and try to help somebody else's mind and spirit grow. And some people just they don't want to. They like doing what they're doing. And yeah.
But anyway, I think if more people adopt the model of connectedness, then maybe we wouldn't believe that money is the only thing that matters about a person. This is what I always say, because I'm so sick of this capitalist single mindset.
Same.
Like, not only are we just completely focused on money, we're also illogically focused on accumulations of money. That even if Jeffrey Epstein, who's this
You mean like
horrible person,
status?
Yeah, we attribute status to whoever has the most money, just automatically. We didn't even care what they did. Like, they could be robbing banks their whole life, and like they called Jeffrey Epstein, that horrible guy that abused young girls. They called him a man of mystery because they didn't know where his money came from, but they all came over and celebrated, and they celebrated him, and they put articles up about him. Man of mystery. Like, that is such a corrosive mindset to a well, functioning society. You can't just honor anybody just because they made money, and a lot of people are doing it illegitimately. So anyway, we need to care about other things about people besides the amount of productivity they're contributing, and the way you accumulate money isn't always productivity. A lot of people are just leeching it from other people, and they're given a similar amount of admiration and respect, and the people that work really hard and make money are given less. And a lot of people that original money came from gold mines and the gold rush in the beginning,
Right.
and that was just people being greedy, stopping other people from getting to their goals.
What humans put value to, we decided that money has a value, and that's how you get things, and things have value, and you have a lot of things, then you yourself are valuable. And I would have loved to have seen how society would have gone if we just kept that whole barter and trade thing. And, like, I have water. Do you need some water? Here's some water. Or, you have that table, but I have this chair, or I have a couple chairs. Like, I can give you a chair. You can give me a table. I just, money sucks sometimes.
Yeah.
But here I am, I use it because that's the society we live in right now.
Josie, I wanted to point out, too, that there's the level of complexity that a society is in as to whether that system will work. Like the barter and trade started out that way. It's very healthy because then if you get somebody, you love them for a good reason. They gave you some stuff that helps you with shelter or whatever.
Right.
But you know what they're like as a person. When you get into a more complex society, you now have accumulations of money that are happening where you don't know what they're like as a person at all. And what they're actually like is completely eluding you.
Well, I think that would be a debate on. I mean, that could be a completely different debate on whether how we see a certain person, whether we think they're worthy of having things like shelter, water, food. And I'm somebody who I don't really agree with the death penalty. So I think that everyone is worthy of basic human needs, that no matter how they live their life or what they think, that they should have a shelter over their head, they should have water, they should have food at the very least. So if somebody came to me and I had something to help them with, and it wasn't something I was using myself, but I know that this person was not a good person, or maybe I didn't like this person very much, it would be very hard for me to say, no, you can't have this. You can't have this water. You have to go, be dehydrated because I don't like you. I don't see it that way, but I know a lot of other people see things in the way where this person did a bad thing or does bad things, so they don't even deserve life. The whole death penalty thing. They don't even deserve to live. They don't deserve to be here. And at the same time, I think that if somebody, like a serial killer murdered a bunch of people, and it's like, well, obviously the death penalty, that's what you have to do. But how are they going to continue to learn things and grow if you just cut it off?
It's amazing how cruel souls can be to each other. Right?
Yeah.
It's like torturing ants thing.
Right.
We do it to each other all the time.
Yes, we do.
So cruel. And, that has to be said. As we're talking about all this spiritual stuff and being all highfalutin about how great things are and how we're all connected, we're also very cruel to each other. Let's remember that,
Yeah.
Don't ignore it. And judgment and all that stuff. I still don't understand why one soul would torture another soul. But that happens a lot. What?
You got to read your soul's plan. The books.
Somebody knows the plan. I don't know it. I know it. I just don't realize I know it.
Right.
But yeah, the books go into why souls choose very challenging situations, especially like why would a soul choose to be in a family that would completely abuse them until like early adulthood? Like why would you choose something like that? And there are reasons apparently for it, but as the personality, you don't remember choosing those reasons. So it seems like you just got the luck of the draw to get in, like be in a bad family.
I used to struggle with that.
Oh yeah.
No, I used to struggle with that. So I always thought, I didn't ask to be born. It kind of blew my mind when this one was like, oh, actually, no, it's a soul plan. You chose this life for yourself. I'm like, there's no way. I wouldn't have chose this certain family member to be a family member. There's no way I would have chose that. And maybe I did. And my theory now is that, I'm here for my mom and my mom is here for me and we're here to support each other. I think I chose her so we could get through this life together.
We should all do
I don't know if that's regression. What it is. Huh?
I said we should all do past life regression and then each share our experience from that.
Yeah, because I don't know about that either. Like I was telling Christian, there's people in my life that have come into my life and they've hurt me. And they've hurt me in such a way that it veered me off of my life path.
Right.
And it veered themselves off of their own life path. Who's to say that that wasn't your intention to begin with,
Huh?
Who's to say that that wasn't your soul's intention to begin with, to see what you would do with that particular challenge?
Yeah, okay.
You're where you are today.
You can always conceive of it like, yeah, they're just challenges, but it doesn't seem like that was necessary for me.
Right.
It veered me off my path. I would have been further along in my path and been more enriched in what my soul really wants if I wasn't dealing with this person.
No, see, I agree with Kevin with that, because I've had those same thoughts that I feel like certain things that I've been through have hindered me from being better than I am now, and it is hard to conceive that I chose this. So you can tell me that there's a life's plan and I chose this, and I can try to come to terms with that. But that is something that is difficult for me to perceive that way, because humans can be very cruel to one another, and you really do wonder what the point is, or why anybody has to go through suffering like that.
Yeah, and I understand that, but we're all coming from the human perspective. The human doesn't fathom why the soul would have made that choice. But what's apparent in these regression sessions is that it always comes back is that you did make the choice. And the spirit guides that come through will often say there is no such thing as coincidence. These things happen for a reason. And there are certain reasons that your soul wants to understand something. But wait, not finished. And
But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more. But I lost my place. But yeah, he said that it actually helps you, because if you can actually get to that level where you can understand that maybe you chose a specific challenge, and you can get to that point, the point of like starting to slowly accept maybe why would I choose something like this, to ask yourself, why would I choose something like this? What is this? What am I trying to show myself? What am I trying to learn from this situation? Because without investigation, it's just a situation, and then there is no understanding of the underlying reason for why it even came to happen in the first place. There's just the act. You're left with the act of that person. I can't forgive them. I don't want to understand, and period. There's nothing else. But when you start to go in with a little bit of more introspectiveness, if that's even a word, to like investigate a little bit why that even happened, where was I in my life? Did I attract this?
I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to do that. Are you saying that I can't ever do that? I want to get over to the other side? Or
no. You're always going to go to that other side. But at the same time, once you get to that level and you can start to see that I planned this, if you get to that level of I planned this, you actually make it easier on yourself, because you'll start to investigate and see why. Because there's many people who won't go with that mindset. They just go with victim mentality. And then they're like, I'm the victim, this happened to me, screw this person, and then leave it at that. And then
if I could just interject here, when you said, what energy could you have been, say attracting, which I totally get that that's a thing. And law of attraction works negatively and positively. But for those that kind of come into this life and are abused as children, it's hard for me to conceive of how, other than maybe them choosing that life path, I don't see what they could have done as a law of attraction to have somebody treat them that way from the get-go.
That's actually covered in the book too, and they talk about this. And those are the questions that Robert Schwartz has asked. Why would a soul choose those particular challenges? And there's always something to be learned from those instances. And I'm not saying they attracted.
But when you go through those instances, it makes your soul sad. And it brings down your soul. It
can, but not always, because through that contraction, there are so many souls that expand and actually get a greater understanding through what we call suffering. Because he says that through suffering, but it doesn't always have to happen this way. I'm just giving one example. Through suffering.
You mean compassion?
No.
Like seeing somebody else go through a horrible experience is that what you're saying?
No. But that can be it too, because through someone else going through that experience, you observing it, you can also learn as a soul. And it was no coincidence for you to observe. And that could branch off into a whole nother conversation. But just for the individual that would have chose that life, why? There are reasons, and they vary. There's not just only one reason why a soul would go through such an experience. And yeah.
Nor
I have a hypothesis. Got to inject, Mike. Okay. By the way, I have a good friend who also was abused when he was growing up as a child, sexually abused, and it is terrible to hear it. And he's struggling with trying to come to terms with it. And I think that is a huge challenge, because number one, you have to figure out why souls hurt each other and torture each other. And you make it sound more rosy than it is, I think, Christian, because
I'm trying to
it's not
explain
just
it mechanically. I'm trying to
Yes, sir.
explain it mechanically, but when you
Yeah.
the thing is, I have to explain it mechanically first. I'm not trying to belittle or make it seem like
No,
it's
I
easy,
understand. Yeah.
because I understand those challenges exist and they're very difficult. And I haven't experienced some of them, but he does cover those topics and he does ask those questions and he goes over why certain individuals went through those particular challenges. And when you read it from that perspective, every time the person goes through these sessions and then they actually get regressed, and they then come out of the session with a greater understanding as to why, and they have their own clarity on why they specifically on their journey chose that particular path. And they say that it's actually incredibly healing. But you have to want that. You have to want to go do that, investigate, or even get a past life regression.
So you're adamant about saying that even when you're in a situation where you're being abused or something horrible, when
I'm
a
sorry,
soul
I
is
don't
hurting
mean to be laughing while we're having this serious conversation, nor in the background. Anybody that's watching this, I'm not laughing about abuse. I'm laughing at Noor doing what he's doing in the background. I just had to say that.
He's
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's the memory phone. I think
Okay.
he's messing.
It's okay. Yeah. I get that you're basically saying that no matter what is happening, even if a soul is seemingly, oppression, slavery, that's a horrible thing. It exists, and souls enslave other souls. We talked about this before, and we haven't actually gotten into this deeply, but you can actually think of slavery as maybe not a bad thing. That it's a whole other topic, but that in most cases it is bad, and the people that are being oppressed feel like a soul is torturing them or hurting them or cutting off their potential and that sort of thing. The way you're describing that there's all this learning, which makes sense. I'm just saying when you're going through it, it doesn't feel like you're in a nice, friendly school.
No.
It feels like you're being horribly mistreated, and it's unfair, and you're sitting there, and your life sucks because of it, and walls are closing in on you, and it's a horrible experience when you go through it. And the last thing I'll just say is, one thing I can see in that is that it is an opportunity to figure out how to feel love and express love for other people when you're going through something like that, because something like that can close you off from the ability to feel love and express love. And that if you're able to continue to express love, then your capacity to express love is probably much greater than anybody else's.
There was actually an NDE.
There's one thing there.
There's an NDE video.
You back to the soul, you can love people better.
There was an NDE video I watched this morning, and he was talking about how his family, he grew up being abused by his father, and he was talking about how his father would say and express that, he didn't even want him, that he would kill him if he wouldn't get in trouble with the law and stuff. And throughout his NDE, he was given the understanding that he has to show and express more love. And he's like, I understand that that's a very hard concept to grasp for a lot of people, but in so doing, even expressing my love towards my father who hated me, it was actually helping him, because he came from a place from a lack of love. So he had, from his understanding, his level of awareness, that's the only way he knew how to express it. But in so showing people that there's another way, it actually helps them, even though it may not be perceptible on the surface, because they still may be a dick, or they may still be like, an asshole or something. It still actually helps them energetically learn that. And maybe that's that soul's journey, because we all know about the life review, and that person is going to have that understanding of what they did on that level. And again, we've all been the victims, and also the people committing the acts. So the soul will come down to experience all sides of an issue. We have been killed, and we've been the murderers. And the soul.
Yeah, and by the way, the NDEers also say that suffering is actually the real gift. Some people have said that.
Yeah.
Suffering is the real substance of life on Earth.
It teaches them certain lessons.
Think about that.
I
Yeah.
I understand that that perspective. I also don't think that anyone needs to stay in a situation that's harmful to them.
Of course not.
Just to be clear that there are certain people that you can choose not to have in your life if they're harmful.
That may be part of the lesson.
And if you want to try, it's up to you if you want to keep them in your life and you want to try to love them. But you can also love someone from afar.
Yeah.
And from a distance. And you don't necessarily have to let their energy in that way. So
it's been expressed in the book, one of the books, where the being of light is being channeled through this woman, where he expresses that forgiveness and love and compassion doesn't mean you have to put up with being mistreated. That you may have that person in your life either to show them a lesson. They could be there for you, for your growth, to show that you can transcend that situation and empower yourself enough to leave that situation. That could be what you're trying to learn. It could be for a lot of different reasons. And it could very well be put there as an obstacle for you to show that you can actually move past that situation and be like, I don't want to take this anymore. I love you, but I'm letting you go. And then you can move on. But some people don't get to that point and they stay stuck and they don't learn the lesson. And they keep going and perpetuating that situation. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and by the way, I probably need to wrap up in maybe 10 minutes or something because I'm having dinner with my mom tonight.
Oh, nice.
I got to get...
What's for dinner?
That's what I was saying. What are you going to eat?
Oh, I'm getting Taco Bell. Which is so funny. You guys were saying, don't eat meat. I'm like, I'm going to go get some Taco Bell.
I didn't say that.
I know, I did say that. But, yeah, what was I saying? Oh, yeah, so I just got about 10 minutes or something like that. And, so the suffering thing and souls, I don't remember what my thought was.
Oops.
Go ahead. I'll get it later.
Okay, this is the perfect time to talk about what society, you brought it up multiple times, what kind of society would we have? What would we look like as a people that no longer acted on just, being selfish, completely different system, not having a centralized government, healthcare would be different for people. And when I say healthcare, I don't mean healthcare as a system, as in like paperwork, you need healthcare for that. I'm talking about completely, it's your God-given right to be healed, and we're more loving towards each other and we help each other. And that's where it seems to be going. That's what it looks like, because people are becoming more aware, more open. They're seeing the corruption all around and they're saying no, and when enough people say no,
I think if everybody did have an NDE, things would change for the better. And like Kevin said, you're still going to have the X's, but I think we'd have a lot more Y's. I think it would be much, much more balanced, because I do think that we do have more X's than Y's right now. And that's where a lot of problems come from, and why people are hungry and why people are sick. And, it's just, it would be hard for me to imagine for somebody to go through that experience of an NDE and come back here and not have anything change, for them not to treat anyone differently than they already do. Maybe some changes would be bigger for others, but it kind of like when you can't unsee something and you can't unknow something, it would definitely have to change. Things would be better. I think that we would be tackling that climate change issues that we're having with global warming. I think that we would take that so much more seriously. And I think people eating and not going hungry, instead of just putting commercials out there and saying for 10 cents a day you can help this poor child eat, we would really be giving them food. And we wouldn't need commercials like that anymore. They would just be eating. And
we put a higher importance on entertainment, and these industries make so much money, and it's just to facilitate more entertainment to keep coming in. Meanwhile, we're having
Consumerism,
a
yeah.
good, yeah, meanwhile, we have like a good time
Right.
while there are other people suffering. That's crazy.
In America, it's not about what you do; it's about how you present yourself. I
Yeah.
heard that quote a long time ago, and
Sorry about
it
my
seems accurate
ninjas.
most of the time. Yeah. Also, they don't have to have the NDE, which is my argument. I agree with you. If everybody had an NDE, we'd have a radical transformation. We'd have a great society. It'd be so much better. Be so much loving and it'd be magic. We'd have great technology and not be afraid. We would have companies trying to push, destroy good technology.
Right.
It's happened a lot in the oil and gas industry. They
Yeah.
destroyed a lot of good tech, including my dad's windmill. He made a new kind of windmill, and we couldn't get it into wind farms, and a lot of resistance. And then later discovered there's a lot of corruption in the oil and gas industry. And there's a lot of corruption in every industry, in the dating
There's
industry.
corruption
where I-
everywhere.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, dating industry is very corrupt where I work, and that's kind of one of the reasons I'm in there. And to uncorrupt or to provide some light in the whole thing. But I still think that just like I've woken up without having a full NDE, I've had little miscellaneous experiences, with one of the most profound just being all the blood rushed out of my head when I got up too fast, and time slowed down, and I got into this infinite state where I felt like I was existing forever, just in a moment of losing the blood out of my head. And that's enough to realize that there's the spiritual world could be real, and then you watch NDEs, you'll realize that it's real. If we just had everybody watching NDEs and giving them the attention and time, I believe they'd all switch their mindsets to connectedness, and we'd have a wonderful world.
Yeah.
That's why I'm trying to talk about it.
Yeah, we
I
don't
think
have
it
to die
also-
to get there.
I feel like it needs to happen a little more slowly than we would like it to. And a lot of people don't seem to learn by other people's mistakes or achievements. I think that, we like to imagine how great it would be if everyone would have an NDE and things would change quickly, overnight. Everybody has an NDE. But it's obviously it's not supposed to happen that way, and it's got to be a slower transition. And I also think that if everything was perfect, as humans, we want to strive for perfection in everything.
Right.
That's really boring, though, isn't it? I'm maybe it's just me, but I hate being bored. So if everything was perfect all the time and you don't have that contrast, it's
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, and by the way, we all have attraction to power, which is, I talked a lot about that last time. That even if you feel connected to everybody, you still want to gain power and
where'd he go?
To the other side.